pressure looks good.
Following up. Roger, roll, Atlantic.
Water power supply!
Flight outside of speed off. Speed off.
Yikes. You bet. Okay. We don't need any more of these.
All right, folks, you know the drill. It is another testing day at Boca Chica, Texas, and there is all sorts of activity at the tank farm and the recondenser. The NASA spaceflight team is going to be here bringing you live coverage and commentary of what's going on. But let's start the show by seeing, can you hear me right now, and can you see Starship SN11 over there? John Galloway with NASA spaceflight. 5x5s in chat. That's what I like to see. It means that everything's working and we are ready to go. Like we always say, folks, we don't usually start the stream until we have a very good indication that there's going to be something that you want to see, and the recondenser is a very good indication that there is going to be something that you want to see. So really quickly, we're going to go around the horn and I'm going to introduce our other NASA spaceflight commentators here, starting up at the top of the list with Chris Gebhardt. Chris, how are you doing today?
I am doing good. How's everyone else doing?
All right, we're hanging in there, ready to see maybe a static fire worth looking for, hopefully. So thank you for joining us. Also on the other end, we've got Stephen Marr. Stephen, we got you on comms?
Yeah, excited to be here with Tank Watchers Anonymous.
I'm Steve, and I'm a Tank Watchers Anonymous. I've been watching tanks since what year did you start doing this?
Yeah, right. Yeah. Well, when did the first tank go up?
There
When,
you
did,
go.
when were we wondering if it was a water tower?
Hey, also back at the studio, we've got Thomas Berghardt. Thomas, how you doing?
I'm doing well. Happy for hopefully a Starship SN11 static fire today ahead of a very exciting week, possibly a test flight later this week. But starting off with the static fire, so how's it going?
Sounds good. Y'all also, we've got a lot of people here today. Jack, I think, is out there at South Padre. Jack, are you over at South Padre right now? Can you see anything?
I sure am. I cannot see anything. It's just a wall of white. So
Oh,
I'll
still
be,
too
I'll
much.
be commentating, but not shooting today.
All right, good deal. So just a little bit too much fog out there in South Texas today has not given you visibility from 5-6 miles away yet. But luckily, we've got robot cameras that are closer, and I believe that Mary may be spooling up a feed as well. But folks, here we are. Again, thanks for joining us for a potential static fire. And Thomas, where are we at? Like, what are we looking for? What are we expecting to see today?
Right, so right now we've seen tank farm activity spool up, which is that ground support equipment off to the left indicating that they're getting ready to do some sort of fueling operations. Right now what we're expecting today is the standard pre-flight static fire test, so firing up the 3 Raptor engines on Starship SN11 for just a couple seconds, which is kind of a final check of all the vehicle systems, all the fueling systems, the engines themselves, and making sure they're all good to go for a flight attempt. If this test is successful today, we would expect them to do some final pre-flight preparations, usually including installing the flight termination system and things like that, unhooking the flaps and making sure they're ready for flight and all those kind of things. And that usually takes a day or so, so that would probably put a flight target maybe tomorrow, maybe more likely Wednesday as sort of their first attempt. Obviously contingent on a successful static fire test. They have to review the data, make sure that all looked good. But that's what we're expecting today. Right now, our next thing that we'll be looking at sort of from our camera views is for the vehicle itself to start venting, which would indicate that propellant is actually flowing into the vehicle. And that will tell us that we're into the business end of the countdown before a static fire test. So that's where we stand as of right now.
Excellent. So we are, if you look at the timeline, at the Tank Farm Act. Oh, wow. I did not make that large enough for me to actually read where we are in the timeline. Where are we in the timeline right now, y'all?
Right now we're at tank farm activity. We've seen
Okay.
the recondenser and the other tank farm equipment spooling up, so that's where we are now.
Okay, sorry. I went to say it out loud and reiterate where we were, and then I hadn't brought it up on the big window yet. But we see the tank farm activity. We're going to be looking, like Thomas said, for propellant to start loading. Might be a little tough today because there is not a lot of contrast with the background there. It was super foggy this morning. Couldn't really see what was going on. And luckily here, coming up around noontime, the fog has burned away enough that we've got a pretty good shot of Starship SN11. However, the road closure was supposed to end in 1 minute and 10 seconds.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's exactly what I was about to say. Is that seems like road closure imminent. Road closure ending would be imminent, but we've seen SpaceX many times now extend the road closures. So hopefully they are able to get a 2 or 3 hour extension and get a static fire done in that time. But we'll just have to wait and see if the road opens in a minute or two, which I suspect not.
And with the tank farm going like this, I imagine that the road is going to stay closed.
Yeah.
Yeah, about the only thing you can expect to see going up or down Highway 4 right now is either law enforcement, SpaceX security, or the occasional errant pickup truck pulling kayaks that we do not want to see.
God, you could really see that. Luckily, the beach is cleared up a little bit. A lot of times, y'all, this camera angle has a little bit less visibility. It's closer, but it's closer to the water as well, and the fog tends to persist around here. But we've got a lot of activity. Look at that. All right. So let's see here.
I'm already seeing a super chat that I wanted to talking about something I kind of wanted to get to.
Get it.
Terry Heaton with $20 on a super chat asks, I'm very curious about the workforce at Boca Chica. Oh, let me put that up there. Where do they come from? Or is this a boon to local laborers? And I'm not sure if they're like local people. I think they've come from far and wide, but I was just thinking the other day watching some footage of them like installing the insulation that's going to go under those heat tiles, and just seeing them work, I was thinking, these people, I imagine they're really good at what they do. I just listened to Liftoff, and so Liftoff goes into how Elon Musk is really good at like picking people and that are really good at what they do and passionate about what they do, and I have to assume that same kind of thinking goes into hiring people for this, and so it kind of led me to think, these guys are really invested in this. It's not just some crew out there trying to get something done as quick as they can, and I imagine, what they are thinking when it finally comes down to launch day or even static fire day. They're probably watching just like we are, excited to see what's going to happen next, what's going to happen with their baby that they just spent all these hours constructing. But what do you guys know? Are these local people, or are they traveling from far and wide to come work on Starship?
I think there's definitely a lot of locals that are on site for sure. I mean, I think one of the effects.
We're getting robot Jack.
Yeah, Jack.
Starships.
Stand by, Jack. We'll get you back in a little bit.
Jack, we can't. We just got full robot mode right now. It's going to keep playing out his buffer for a second, it sounds like. Oh, jeez. That's never good. So I grew up down there. I can speak to how this sort of works quite a bit. I've got a lot of family that work in this sort of industry, and I say this sort of industry, not in the space industry, but in the things need to be welded together industry.
Right.
Pipes need to be connected, towers need to be built. Like I've got a bunch of family that were involved with that, with the refineries, because I grew up in Corpus Christi, and there are going to be a ton of people that travel for work like this. And you see, like,
switch cameras, please.
Oh, sure. Are you ready to do the thing?
No, we're seeing a methane vent on the other camera that we cannot see from this angle. There you go.
There you go. The methane vent. Excellent. So you'll get a ton of people that travel, from all over, but the people that are working on these projects for SpaceX are not new to doing this sort of stuff. Installing a tank farm like that, this is the teeniest, tiniest little baby tank farm I've ever seen in Texas. They build stuff so much bigger than this. And the skilled welders and pipe fitters, crane operators, all the folks that have years and years of experience putting together refineries and pipelines and energy infrastructure and all that sort of stuff, even moving into some of the new energy infrastructure like wind farms and stuff like that. They are old hands at fitting together pipes and tanks and stuff like that. So a lot of times you'll see them travel around to different projects. They'll start off like temporarily, and they'll go down there and they're out gone for 3 months. They're gone for 6 months. Then they go home for a weekend or whatever, and they're living there on site, and their family lives up in Plano or somewhere, right? But I imagine as the project stays, the longer they build up the facility and the more things that get installed, you'll see more and more people sort of moving to the area instead of doing the temporary work there, but really live somewhere else. Their family's like 300 miles away or something, and they go visit them on the weekends or something. You see that all over Texas. A lot of the different production and the construction that happens for the oil field industry is migrant is not really the right terminology. I mean, they do move around, but a lot of times you'll work on the site for 4 weeks, 4 months, a year, and you're away from your family that lives somewhere else. So
That kind of reminds me. Whenever I first moved here, I was doing some Uber driving, and it turned out there was a lot of people that had traveled here just as contract welders to work on Slick 40.
Yep.
After the static fire anomaly here back in 2016, and they were here to rebuild that pad. So that was really interesting to hear from these folks that had come down here to work for SpaceX temporarily to build a launch pad. And I guess that that's probably the same kind of deal they're doing down in Boca Chica.
Yeah,
How's my audio?
who knows, Jack? It's gonna come and go. Like we heard that, but it's probably gonna come and go. We'll let you know if it goes robot, but we were able to hear that.
Yeah, all I was going to say is that basically.
Oh no!
Yeah, Jack, we totally lost it again. We need to get Jack a big antenna to put out on the
Construction
balcony or
methods and
something like
materials
that.
Common to that.
We're gonna put a giant
to throw
antenna
that
on
on.
Jack's Land Rover,
yeah.
and it'll we'll just link him in with that.
Wasn't there like mobile Starlink terminals coming down the road sometime?
Oh, geez.
Yeah.
Just don't hold your breath.
Anyway,
Alright.
the methane vent is happening right now. It seems to be going longer than we have seen before, which is interesting. But we also saw propellant loading start. You can see the vapors coming from the aft section of Starship SN11, which is an indication that the methane vent is currently underway, or the propellant loading is currently underway. And I do have our timeline, if I got this updated correctly. This is the timeline for the countdown sequence for a launch and a static fire, which of course today's countdown is for a static fire. So you can see we're currently at the methane vent, or the upper tank vent, which starts around T-minus 16 minutes, although that has been a bit short for the previous couple countdowns we've seen. So it might be a bit longer, but probably about 15 to 20 minutes away from the static fire at this point.
I like our solution for the labels on the left-hand side covering up the tank farm. There's an arrow.
The condenser's over there.
Well done. Not pictured in the scene.
Yeah, our previous overlay was for the other pad, so we had to adjust.
We're nimble.
Agile. I think that's the industry term, right?
Agile. There you go.
A couple more super chats and stuff that have come in. Mr. Sabres fan with the new membership, thank you so much. Luke Westfall says, shout out to Ms. Westfall, my sister, and her class of first graders. We did a space lesson last week, and I think she has a lot of future astronauts excited about space flight. That is awesome to hear, and thank you so much.
Oh, yeah.
For the support and the kind words. That's awesome.
And maybe they're watching right now. If you're watching right now, hello.
Hey, how's it going? If you're watching now, you have a cool teacher who's showing NASA spaceflight in school.
Almost as cool as my American history teacher that every once in a while would let us watch Seinfeld episodes.
Oh, nice.
What does that have to do with history?
Yeah, how does that work?
There's a one episode where they do kind of a like a JFK thing, like from the movie JFK. Remember? Yeah.
J Root with a new membership, thanks so much. And then we've got a question here from Durai. How many more Starlink launches to the point where there are more SpaceX satellites in orbit than all others put together? Thank you. Ooh, it's oh, hold on, let me Google something really quick. We're getting close.
They just topped 1,200, right?
Yeah, they are. Sorry, so there's an important caveat there, because if you limit it to active satellites, we're getting close. It's somewhere around like 3,000-ish active satellites in orbit around Earth at any one time, although that number is obviously increasing. And Starlink is up to past 1,200 now. that's only active satellites. There are a lot of satellites that have been retired or have malfunctioned or whatever that are still in orbit. So if you count those, then it's not even close yet, I don't think. But maybe later this year, if you're counting just the active satellites, they'd probably reach that point, which is very interesting.
Is that vapors
Yep.
from the bottom of the vehicle?
Looks like
Yep, I
Yeah.
think so.
Yeah, from this perspective, it really does look like we're getting vapors from underneath the skirt. So another good good indication that they're moving forward. Again, y'all, we don't have an official timeline from SpaceX. We sort of put this together ourselves. There's literally a spreadsheet involved. The overlay that came up with the little dots on it, that's actually done by Adrian, and he is a member of the community back on the Discord and forums and stuff like that. And keeps a spreadsheet. And so what we can look at here on the screen is you see the vapors coming from the bottom of Starship. That tells us that there's cryogenic liquids moving into the Starship, because then we get vapors around the Starship. There's super cold liquid going into it. So that means that they are starting to load prop into the vehicle. Of course, we are going to stand by and wait for that trivent and the siren. Those come really quick. Like a lot of times now we're getting the trivent, and then right after the trivent we get the siren. So we'll see if we get the microphone online before then. Mary is actually stuck in traffic behind a crane.
Oh no!
Oh no!
So she's
That tends to happen in Boca Chica, doesn't it?
she's stuck behind, I think, Tankzilla, and she can't get to her spot because Tankzilla is moving to its spot, and it's in the way, and the road is blocked right now. So we've got the microphone on her camera, and we're trying to get that spooled up, hopefully, but she is blocked in traffic by the crane right now.
Let's got a couple more super chats and stuff to get through really quick. Michael says, "Nice to have y'all back. Let's hope for a good static fire." Thank you so much. Appreciate it. Moldy Space Industry says, "Perfect day for the Thomas Fogg Club." Thank you so much. What's up, Moldy Space? Matthew says, "Here for the telestrations and webinars. Starhopper looks rad peeking through the condensation. Appreciate your coverage." Well, we appreciate your support, Matthew. Thanks a lot.
We don't appreciate webinars.
But Jack doesn't appreciate webinars. But other than that, thank you so much. And then Paul Wirtz with the super chat as well. Thanks for the support. We've got a question here from Adrian, who asks, "Can we talk about SpaceX's orbit by July 1st plan?" So, if you have not seen yet, you should check out nasaspaceflight.com. The lead article right now is an update on Starship and Super Heavy and all of that. Obviously, if you're following this webcast, you're probably also following our other Starship coverage, as you should. And we did just Chris Bergen, managing editor of NASA Spaceflight, did just write up an article which includes the news that SpaceX has an internal target of reaching orbit with Starship and Super Heavy by July 1st. Not just any July 1st, this July 1st, 2021. Is that
July 1st?
Yeah. Is that aspirational? And what's the word I'm looking for?
Optimistic.
Optimistic? Yeah, exactly. Yes, absolutely. Is it doable? Maybe not even. It might not even be possible. But that's their internal target, right? That's for the big thing to take away from that is that they are definitely hoping to have it this year at some point, even if it's not by July 1st. It shows kind of what their internal target is, which can kind of give you a sense of what the realistic target would be, which would be later this year. So yeah, that's something that we could definitely talk about. I mean, it's obviously contingent on a lot of test flights and things happening before that. We've got SN11, who's going to try to nail that landing for the first time, as far as finally kind of fine-tuning the belly flop and landing burn. That would be a huge step. After this, they're going to actually move into the first super heavy testing booster, BN1, which will just conduct some ground testing at the suborbital launch site, not do any flight testing. That will be reserved for BN2. I believe SN15 is the next Starship test prototype that will conduct some flights, and that will do some sort of flight test, again, refining that landing maneuver and learning more things about the Starship vehicle itself. And then at some point, after a couple other Starship prototype and booster prototypes testing sequences, which will hopefully include a BN2 test flight after BN1 stays on the ground. Don't know what kind of test flight profile that could be. We can talk about that in a little bit. But basically, it should set the stage for SpaceX's target of using Starship SN20 and booster BN3 as the full stack for the first orbital test flight. Now, what does that test flight entail? Is it literally get to orbit and that's it? Is there some sort of re-entry? Will Starship SN20 be able to support a re-entry test at the end of that mission? We don't really know. But that's kind of what we can talk about now as this internal target that SpaceX has set. We'll have a better idea as testing progresses how realistic that is and what other steps are in between now and then. But yeah, that shows how optimistic SpaceX is that they will get an orbital launch later this year.
Right on. We have a question. Just even if you don't leave a super chat, you can do at NASA Spaceflight, and we can still see those questions. Let's see. This one I can't answer off the top of my head, but I'm thinking probably one of y'all can. Why does Starship only have short static fire compared to SLS, which is a few minutes?
That is a good question. So there's a difference between a pre-flight static fire and a sort of the hot fire test that SLS is coming up on doing later this week. So the test that the first SLS core stage is undergoing currently Thursday on the 18th is a full mission duration firing. It lasts 8 minutes nominally, which is the same amount of time that stage will fire in flight. And that is being done at the beginning of the SLS program as sort of a verification of all the development work that they've done ahead of the first flight. That is not a test that will be conducted before every single SLS launch.
Is that a tri-vent going? I think we have a tri-vent going on the vehicle now, so about 12 minutes to T0, barring
we do
any
have
holds.
a tri-vent. That is something, yep, absolutely. So that's another milestone going on as engine chill begins with the 3 Raptor engines. So yeah, that is a good milestone to point out. Thank you.
So that would be T0 around 12:27.
Yeah, it's about 12 minutes, isn't it? From tri-vent to firing. And it does not look like we're going to get the other camera up in time for the siren, but we'll make sure Mary lets us know if there is a siren.
Yeah, and that tri-vent is the most reliable indicator of T0. So about 11 minutes now, we should expect to either see the... here you go. There you go. You can see it right there on the graphic that we have up. About 11 minutes, 54 seconds from T0, those 3 vents, the engine chill vents, spool up. Hard to see from this angle, but we can see that it's going on from our other angles, and you can see about where they are, that orange circle on the vehicle. Should be progressing towards a static fire, hopefully really soon here. I mean, somebody texted me this morning and said, would they static fire when it's so foggy out? And I was like, yeah, it's just fog, no big deal.
Yeah, they've done that before too, so.
Yep, I can confirm. I have been here for static fires that were not visible, just like this one will be not visible from my perspective anyways. But luckily we've got the robot army out there.
Really quick, I want to wrap up the answer to this question. So this SLS test is a one-time thing for its first flight. And is not a regular sort of pre-flight static fire. These static fires we're looking at with Starship are standard for before these test flights, before each and every one, not just for the first one. This is similar to what Falcon 9 does on most flights, not all, but on most flights, Falcon 9 still conducts a pre-flight static fire, which again just lasts a couple seconds as far as sort of a preparation for flight.
Yeah, I mean, there's not even a flame trench, right? They would just nuke the whole pad if they tried to burn it for like 5 minutes or something.
The other point to make, though, is that SpaceX does conduct full mission duration test firings of brand new boosters. When they come from Hawthorne, they first go to McGregor, Texas, their testing facility, and they conduct a full mission duration firing in a much beefed up test stand that's designed for that. So SpaceX also does those with every new Falcon 9 core.
Which one thing that's kind of interesting about those is they actually have to hold it down, not just with the clamps at the bottom, but they have to have like this cap on top and cables going into the ground, because when they do a full mission duration firing, all the fuel and oxygen is leaving the booster, and that makes the booster lighter, and the clamps can't hold the booster once that stage is empty. So they've got to have extra strength holding it down, keeping it from taking off.
Yep. So those are the differences in the sort of different kind of hot fire or static fire tests that you see at different vehicles. It's about where it is in development and whether it's like a pre-flight test or like a developmental test.
It does make me wonder if once they get the orbital pad up and running, we might see like a full duration or a longer duration static fire of a Starship. And I'm getting from Adrian, the spreadsheet wizard, our resident wizard of spreadsheetery, estimated T0 of 12:27:25.
Oh, down to the
So
seconds, huh?
9 minutes away.
yeah, like I said, that tri-vent is the most reliable indicator of T0. I think it's 11 minutes and 54 seconds, almost always, from those engine chill through those 3 vents activating to T0. So that's why we're able, or why Adrian is able to predict, and again, it is a prediction. There could be holds, things could change in the count, but based on our data and based on everything that we've seen so far, 12:27. Oh gosh, now I'm forgetting what he actually. 12:27:25. So let's see. Let's play the game and see how close Adrian has gotten.
We've
I
got
mean,
There's only
sometimes he's within a couple seconds. So
he only has 20,000 people watching, so no pressure, Adrian.
But we got a couple. So we got a couple minutes before static fire. I'll try to get maybe one more question in here. Average Joe, as per the latest NSF article, if BN3 launches without a catch tower ready, will it have crushed legs like current starships, or possibly ditch in the ocean? Yeah, so they could put some legs that are like similar to the current starship ones on, or something like that. They also have the option of going out into the ocean. It's possible that the one of Phobos or Deimos might be able to simply act as a landing platform. It wouldn't be a lot of infrastructure needed on that ship, just to have somewhere where a super heavy could attempt to land. So it's possible they try to get that into a very minimal operational state and use that. Or I don't know if they'd want to ditch it in the ocean. That doesn't seem like SpaceX's Starship program is very fond of intentionally expending things.
I vote
Although I
ditch.
guess they could surprise us. You vote ditch? You think they'll just do
Yeah.
that?
Absolutely. Get to orbit as quick as you can. Prove you can orbit the thing. I wouldn't be surprised if they ditch, but it really depends on, to me, how long it takes them to get ready for that orbital flight. Because if July is just right out the window and it ends up being closer to the end of the year, well, Phobos, which is the first of the 2 platforms to undergo modifications, Phobos might be able to be in support of a landing by the end of the year. I mean, if all they're going to do so far with Phobos is pull out everything off of the deck and just create a flat surface on legs, basically, for landing on, I could see them getting that done by the end of the year, and then I could see them landing BN3 on Phobos. But if BN3 is ready to go before there's a landing platform for it, then I think they would just ditch it into the ocean and get the data when they can.
See that? I mean, as many starships as have been destroyed, and it's really not that big of a deal. But they're just trying to press on through the milestones. I could see that.
We'll have a better idea as we get closer and see kind of where Phobos and Deimos are looking like. See what we might marry spots like legs on a booster or not on a booster or whatever. The plans are going to be very fluid this early on, so, and it will likely depend on how SN11 does and all those kind of things. So
we are coming up on 5 minutes from predicted T0. Remember, 12:27:25, and right now we are at 12:22 and coming up on 25 seconds, so just about 5 minutes. And I don't think we've heard any kind of siren, but that doesn't mean one hasn't happened.
Yeah, and again, we don't have that live mic on right now, so Mary was stuck in traffic and couldn't get set up. But I asked if she could tell us if she heard it. So she's probably like either rushing to set up or something. But no confirmation that we've heard the siren yet out there.
Let's see. Mathis commented new TFRs for Wednesday and Thursday. Tomorrow's TFR canceled, and that is correct. There's no flight planned for tomorrow, right?
I'll do a quick check here, but I believe
I would.
no, there's still a TFR tomorrow.
Yeah,
Oh, there is?
I think there is one tomorrow.
Oh,
Yep,
There's
there's a currently listed TFR for tomorrow, Wednesday, and Thursday.
oh,
Yeah,
okay.
correct.
Sorry, Mathis. There's still a TFR tomorrow. There's still hope.
I wouldn't place too much money on it, though.
Right, yeah, I don't think we've ever seen a launch attempt the next day after the static fire. I think it's always been at least one day for them to get the FTS installed and that kind of thing.
There was
Yes.
also a point when we had never seen 3 static fires in one day.
That's true. So you never know. First for everything, right?
Yeah, we generally assume it'll take them a day to go over data and get everything finalized, get the FTS installed, but you never know. We also thought up until recently, like Steven said, they wouldn't do multiple statics in a day. We also thought a Raptor swap takes multiple days, and they have done it in a day. So
Yep.
they are getting faster with the amount and speed that they are able to do in a certain amount of time.
We're down to
Paul.
about 3 minutes.
Paul Siebold, thank you for the new membership, as well as Tom Boss as well, new membership. Thank you so much.
Yeah, and Adrian is now messaging me that that his prediction on this particular firing is based off of our commentary versus meticulously A/B testing and watching the stream. So if we've been a little bit delayed in announcing that a tri-vent has started or what have you, that might influence the time predicted. But really, any time in the next minute or two, I think it's safe to say we can expect a potential static fire. I mean, at least an attempt. So keep your eyes on the prize. I guess we probably won't be able to see the tri-vent pulse. We can just barely see the leeward tri-vent there at the very top of that condensation cloud. So keep your eyes on that. If it shuts off and turns back on, if that's even visible. Oh, and Brady in our back channel is saying seems like the tri-vent's just pulsed. So about 20
Yeah.
seconds.
Yep, static fire may be imminent then, folks.
And remember to shut up so we can. Oh, we don't have the audio.
We're
now,
not
never
gonna
mind.
hear it. Yeah.
All right, I'll make the sound. How about?
Oh no.
Oh no.
Just yeah, I won't actually. All right, there's our predicted T0.
I'm so tempted to switch to the other camera because we can see a little bit more on the other camera.
I mean, for all we know, based on this condensation cloud we're looking at right now, it tried to fire and aborted.
I'm not. Are those vents or?
It did not abort because the upper vents did not open.
Yeah, the upper vents aren't going. There was like a little wisp going up there. Watch, I can make a static fire if I change cameras.
Yeah, I was gonna say if you're gonna switch now. There you go.
Yeah. But a little hard to get the contrast there, but not seeing any of the depress vents. Up
I
at
still
the
think we're in the
top.
sort of the final minute or so. There's
there.
another pulse.
There we go.
That's a pulse. I thought it was was it 27
It's
or 25?
27. Yeah, 27 and
There.
27 and 25 seconds.
It's pulsed and it's about to happen.
Yeah, we're close.
Which camera you think we want? I mean, the other one is
This
almost
one?
completely
I
obscured.
think, yeah, I
obscured.
think this one, yeah.
This one.
All right.
There we go.
Abort.
That,
Yeah, that was
that was an
ignition,
abort.
but immediate abort.
It looked
So-
like the pre-burners did fire. I saw a bit of fire, but clearly not enough thrust to be a static fire. We did
Yeah.
expect them to attempt a static fire test, so it's always possible they de-scoped and went to pre-burners. But even for a pre-burner, it did not look like a lot of fire to me.
It looked like it started to create thrust for like a split second. I think that was definitely a static fire.
Yeah, there's a little bit of brown dust that came up, so a little bit of
Yeah.
thrust was created, but it was barely anything.
And there,
I think they just shut down immediately, and there's now a
This is
fire in the
fire.
engine bay.
fire under the rocket. Yeah, and
Yeah.
they do a staggered ignition start, so it's possible that one engine produced some thrust, but the
Yeah.
others had not started up yet.
I'm trying to see if I can catch a little bit of the cloud. You can see the venting from this angle.
Yep,
But
that
there
is
just-
your
there
standard
wasn't-
abort venting.
Yeah, it wasn't very much dust that got kicked up, so maybe something produced a little bit of thrust, but that did not look like a nominal static fire, did it, y'all?
No,
No,
definitely
can
not.
you can you back to the other cam? I'm curious about that residual fire.
Yeah, sure. This one?
Yep. I'm not seeing it anymore, thank goodness.
No.
Hopefully
See
it's
anything.
done. That's a pretty common thing to see a residual fire down in the engine bay.
What's
It
that
is.
one darker bit of smoke coming out? You see that? It looks like it's coming out of a tri-vent, but it's dark. That's...
Maybe it's just
think
in
that's-
shadow.
Yeah, I was
Yeah,
gonna say that
I
might
think-
just be in shadow. I can't tell.
And you
Well-
can see the vehicle's doing its good old-fashioned depress vent.
I don't know. I don't know if that's in shadow because the other plumes around it are not shadowed the same way. Like the big depress vent is on the same side, going straight up the side.
If you
There's
go to the camera from the village, Mars cam as we call it, you will get a better angle on it. To me, it looks like a tri-vent.
Yeah. Maybe the plume above is shadowing it? There's not direct sun today, which is interesting.
It looks like the vapors, when it reaches sunlight, is becoming white again. I think it is just normal venting.
Yeah.
And I also don't see that fire underneath. It was probably just residual from the Raptors shutting down.
So now the question is, will they attempt again today, or will they open the road and head back to the vehicle?
That is the million-dollar question.
I mean, they were already past their scheduled road closure, and I think because of spring break, they're trying to keep the beach open as much as possible. So if I had to guess, I think this is probably going to be it for today, but we don't know for sure, so don't go anywhere until we have confirmation.
Yeah, and just anecdotally, the amount of people currently here for
And
spring
they did
break.
actually, sorry Jack, they did actually just extend the road closure until 3 p.m. So perhaps they could static fire again.
That's enough time for a recycle, in theory, as long as the vehicle itself and engines are fine. But yeah, I was just going to say, there's an insane amount of people here for spring break. I mean, the parking lot of my hotel is literally full. Like the other night, I got back from shooting in Boca, and there was one parking spot open. So, yeah, I've never even seen it remotely that full. And then, similarly, when you're out at the launch site, there's a huge number of people all running around, getting selfies with themselves in Starship. So, way more people than I've ever seen currently out here right now. It must just be, spring break. So it makes sense why they would want to keep the beach open as much as possible.
Yeah, that's definitely happening here in Cocoa Beach. Oh man, like we didn't really get a spring break last year because of COVID, and I think everyone is chomping at the bit to go out and have some fun.
I'd like to point out that I still don't get a spring break because of COVID this year, but whatever, it's fine. I'm not salty.
Who's counting?
But yeah, so Michael reporting that the road closure has been extended till 3 o'clock p.m. local time, so that means they've got 2.5 hours to make a recycle. It did definitely look like an aborted static fire a couple of minutes ago. Obviously, we'll look at the data, figure out what went wrong, and if there's something that they can pretty easily and quickly fix, they can go ahead and try again and see if they can stay on schedule for flight later this week. But
got the vent stack going. Look at that all of a sudden.
Yeah. So we'll stay live and we'll keep answering questions, and we'll obviously, I mean, unless they open up the pad and send personnel back, we'll stay live, I think. Which means that we've got this huge question queue that we can start answering again.
There you go.
So let's see. We got a super chat here from Thomas Anfang, a regular in the stream. Says, honest answer, chance SN20 makes orbit in the summer. We'll go around the horn really quick. I say, I don't know if I want to put a number on it. Low chance that SN20 makes orbit in the summer. Whether on two fronts, because they could either change it and that it's a different Starship that makes orbit, or they don't make orbit until after the summer, or both. So I think the chances of SN20 making orbit in the summer are low. Let's go to Steven next. What are your thoughts?
Well, you just took the words out of my mouth, because there's so many caveats in just that short question that it's got to be SN20 and then in the summer. And yeah, I would say the chances are against them that it happens with SN20 and this summer.
Michael Baylor?
I'm going to say low chance. I mean, there's so many factors that have to get right. The orbital launch site has to be completed. The technical readiness of the booster is another. There's the technical readiness of Starship SN20. I think it's possible, but not very likely.
Jack?
August.
That's summer. That counts. So he's saying yes. He thinks it will. Das?
That's where I was gonna go. I was gonna say define summer, like Elon summer, Australian summer,
summer Elon Standard Time.
Summer Elon Standard Time. Nice.
I think we got Chris G on comms too. Chris, want to offer your chances of SN20?
I don't know if he was expecting
Maybe he's not on
anybody
comms.
to. Yeah.
Yes, sorry. I just saying, I think Das saw my joke and read it out loud. I said, define summer, LOL. Australian summer? Sure.
There you go. So there you go. There's the team's honest answers on whether SN20 might make orbit this summer. Got a super chat here from Rough Riders saying, how far do we think we are from the launch tower being built? I believe in the next couple weeks we're expecting that to start kind of rising because they've got a lot of equipment over there and sort of the preparations are being made for that construction to take place. And that'll be important because obviously that's a precursor to needing an orbital launch attempt. So
I see vehicles driving around in the foreground, and it just makes me think, like, we have all worked various jobs, and somebody else might be like, wow, that's the coolest job ever. But after a certain period of time, even if the job was novel to you at the beginning, oh, look at that, the header tank has got a little bit of frost on it.
Yeah, it does.
Even if a job is novel to you in the beginning, at a certain point it becomes routine, right? And I really do wonder if it's routine for a lot of these workers on site to be driving around with a massive steel spaceship just sitting on the side of the road. I mean, I really do wonder if it's surreal to them still or if it's become routine, because just imagine you're just driving your pickup truck around, doing not much. Don't worry about the giant Starship that just tried to fire up its engines. Go grab lunch. It's just crazy. It's crazy to me.
Here's a super chat question from Musical Wolves saying, do weather balloons require a TFR? I don't believe so. So obviously SpaceX went ahead of a flight. They wouldn't do this for a static fire. Okay, so now I got to take that back now that I think about it, because they do those for flight tests, and the flight tests all have TFRs. So the weather balloons go up to check the wind conditions and things at various altitudes, and they do those ahead of flights, which already have temporary flight restrictions to support them. So I guess the answer is the weather balloons don't require a TFR because they're launched during a pre-flight area where the TFR is already active. So there is a temporary flight restriction which the weather balloons go up, so the balloons won't interfere with aircraft or anything like that.
But if it was just like a science team checking the weather out in the middle of the...
Oh, right. So if it wasn't like a pre-launch weather balloon,
Yeah.
I don't know. I think they have like if there's a scientific one, I've seen them on like sort of like flight tracker applications and things like that. So I think they had transponders, and maybe air traffic control just kind of routes aircraft around as needed. Obviously, there's not like hundreds of weather balloons at in like an area at any one time, so it's probably relatively straightforward to have ATC just handle those kind of instances. So
How many weather balloons are up there right now? One.
oh geez, I can probably get an answer to that. Hold on.
Sorry, I just want. Well, sorry, I can't answer that, but I did just want to hop in because the 45th had a weather day where they talked about how you do things during launch times. And the weather balloons for launches out of the Cape Canaveral Space Force Station and Kennedy Space Center, the weather balloons for those are not launched from that property. They're launched from down south outside of the exclusion zones. So Thomas, what you were saying about weather balloons being tracked by transponders is exactly how they do it, to route aircraft around them.
Cool. I guessed right. Sometimes, so if I like filter my aircraft tracker by like really high altitude, I usually find a couple weather balloons, but I'm not seeing any right now.
The
I
other
was
day,
gonna try and give you an actual. Oh wait, no, there's a couple by Madagascar.
nice.
But yeah, I don't have an actual answer for that.
The other day when I was out at the launch site, I actually saw a weather balloon way up in the air. Yeah, and it was just like a regular balloon, no big deal. It didn't look like anything crazy. So it doesn't seem like it would take too much advance. It's not like a bigger than a hot air balloon or anything. It's not the kind of thing where you need to warn airliners about, I guess, right?
Yep. And I'm gonna put our countdown back, but we're gonna go back to pad clear as we find out if they are going to recycle or not. They're currently in the detanking process. I might add a timeline spot for that. But again, if you're just joining us, they aborted the static fire test, but that does not mean they're done for today. The road closure was extended until 3 p.m. Central Time, so still plenty of time to recycle and see if they can give it another go. That's, of course, assuming that the Raptor did not have any engine-rich exhaust or any other problems that could cause them to have to do some repairs. But We don't know exactly what the problem was, but we did see that static fire get aborted. So hopefully they will be able to make another attempt here shortly.
Hey, Michael, is the clock wrong?
Oh, did it just change?
Oh, when I This is what
We fixed
happens
it at the
when
beginning of
you.
the stream. It went back.
It's because I had a old form that I did not refresh. That's my fault. I'm fixing that.
Yes.
Well,
Hey, what-
it was correct for static fire, and
Yeah.
the reason I ask is because I just wanted to tell our viewers, if you're just joining, if you want to go back and watch, the abort or whatever it was at 12:26:43, 12:26:43, and that is under a minute from Adrian's prediction, but it looks like Adrian timed this prediction on our commentary. They weren't able to watch the stream right this second, so our commentary was delayed, and therefore the data that prediction was based on was flawed. So he went back and retimed and got a 12:26:40 prediction with the retiming based on the actual data. That's within 3 seconds. So let's see what happens if they do a second attempt today. Let's see what Adrian's prediction is able to pull off there. So just wanted to throw that out there because I was teasing it so much before the abort ignition, whatever you want to call it. So
Yeah, so that time should also say CDT, the recent time change here in the U.S.
Yeah,
means
I
that all our
broke.
clocks have to be-
I had fixed that too, and then I broke
Yeah.
everything when I accidentally saved the wrong form. My fault, but that
Michael's
is
on it.
now corrected.
There you go.
woohoo!
We have a couple questions that I feel like kind of go together. Mr. Cheese Pizza asked, "Why does Starship vent?" And to answer that, you kind of got to start out with rockets get some of their strength from being pressurized, just like a soda can. You know, if you stand on a soda can that's closed, it can support your weight, but if you open it and empty it, you can stand on it and it's probably going to crush. So they're pressurized, but they have to maintain like a certain pressure, and as the pressure rises, they sometimes need to bleed off some of that pressure to maintain right where it needs to be. So that sort of answers that. And then another question, Weeb De Jong asked, "What are the clouds being produced by the tank farm activity? Oxygen, methane. So what they're venting off." Now he's asking about the tank farm specifically, but it kind of relates to what Starship's shooting out there. Now you guys probably can answer this better than I can, but as that's being vented out, there's humidity in the air, and you know when cold meets warm and humid, it turns into water vapor, right? Is there actually there's not actually methane in that venting, right?
There's not methane, no. So there is some liquid oxygen vent. Like, so when you go to the Starship, that's venting liquid oxygen, and well, I guess it vents a little bit of methane. Not the giant cloud around the tank farm is not methane. That would be a giant safety hazard. The vehicle itself vents a little bit of oxygen, which is obviously harmless, and a little bit of methane. But there's a whole lot of limits about what they can do with that, and they actually that's why they have the recondenser, so they can try and recapture as much of especially the methane as they can, to limit how much they're venting from that. What you see a lot of the time is nitrogen venting, because they use nitrogen as an inert gas to purge ground lines and things like that of the other chemicals that they're using. And then, like Stephen mentioned, a lot of this venting is actually just a matter of things getting really cold and condensing the water vapor that's in the atmosphere, rather than things that are actually being vented. Over at the tank farm, you would see primarily just nitrogen venting. So that's kind of, it depends on which vent you're looking at, although they all kind of look the same.
Yeah.
Here's a relevant question here from Paul. Thank you for the super chat. It says, how do they plan on keeping the liquidduction and methane from boiling off during re-entry? So re-entry doesn't last that long, so there's a pretty short time period that you have to keep those propellants at a certain temperature. And obviously some of them will boil off. That's just a fact of, even if you weren't in re-entry, those propellants will slowly boil off. Starship will have a system that's able to thermally condition the tanks and keep them from boiling off as much as possible. But they will be a non-zero amount of boil off. It's just a matter of making sure that system can maintain the pressures and the temperatures sufficiently that you don't lose any large chunks of your propellant from boil off, either during interplanetary coasts, either to the moon or to Mars, as well as, of course, during the heating of reentry, which, of course, the heat shield also helps just get some of that energy away from the tanks and prevent that from causing additional boil off. But there will be a thermal control system on Starship to handle that.
Yeah,
it's
I've
actually
always.
it's gonna
Go
be
ahead.
a series of those, like the blue freezer packs you like put in your freezer and they cool down. They're just gonna put a bunch of those around Star.
Is that
I'm
how-
sorry.
Is that how they do it? Yeah, I was gonna say I've always been curious. You know, obviously Starship is gonna need some methane and liquid oxygen when it gets to Mars. How in the world do they keep it cold enough?
That's what the header tanks are for.
So just being in that small space is enough to keep it all cold.
Yeah, it's easier to keep the thermal and pressure conditions in a smaller pressure vessel than the giant main tanks. Not that, I mean, the main tanks will also need a thermal control system because even if you're just on orbit for a couple days, you're gonna, well, I mean, your landing propellant is always going to be in those header tanks, but you're not going to have empty main tanks, and it would be kind of unwise to just let that go to waste. So, especially if there's in-flight maneuvers or things like that, and then once Starship, reaches, especially on a moon, let's talk about a moon mission specifically. Starship launches to low Earth orbit, gets refueled. They're not just filling the header tanks; they're also fueling the main tanks because those tanks are used for the translunar injection. So there has to be a little bit of thermal control to make sure you keep enough of that propellant for your moon burn or for your trans-Mars injection and all those things. So thermal controls will apply to both, but the landing propellant, part of the reason it's in those header tanks is so that it's easier to prevent boil off for those.
And isn't boil off part of the how they keep it cold? Like I seem to remember like when you vent some of it, it actually helps reduce the temperature. Am I remembering that totally wrong?
Right. So yeah, if you decrease the pressure, that causes a decrease in temperature. That's just from thermodynamics. So that is something that's also part of it. You also, SpaceX at least originally wanted to do autogeneous pressurization, which basically means you take the boiled off gases from your liquid propellant and use that to pressurize the tank, and you only vent enough to keep the pressure exactly where you want it, rather than using a different gas such as helium, which is what they've been using on the recent test flights. You just use the exact same gas, the gaseous form of whatever propellant you're using. Since they're having some issues with that, they mentioned on the previous test flights some helium got into Raptor, which caused the thrust issue on SN10. So it's possible that the long-term solution will not be autogeneous pressurization, but we'll see. That is also part of it, though. Yep. Got a super chat here from Tom Boss asking, do we know why SN7.2 was moved? So that test tank no longer at the launch site. Do we have any speculation as to whether they're done with that and they got it out of the way, or if they're going to bring it back to the launch site for further testing later? Do we know?
I don't think we know, but it's a good. My guess, and this is a guess, is that whatever work that they would want to do on it before testing it some more, they want to do back at the build site. Now, it could also be the case that it will just be scrapped and or repurposed in the same way that the serial number 2 test tank now appears to be water storage for the production site. I mean, so we'll just have to wait and see what happens when 7.2 gets whatever the next thing that happens to it at the build site. I mean, maybe it gets wheeled inside the windbreak or inside the mid bay or something, or inside one of the tents, and they do some more work on it and wheel it back out. Or, who knows? Maybe it's at its end of life and we've gotten the data from it that they need. I was honestly kind of disappointed. I thought we'd see that thing pop at some point. I mean, test it to destruction. Do it, SpaceX. Do what I want for my amusement.
Yeah, it's possible that they, already exceeded whatever data they need, and they say, well, we could delay Starship testing by testing the destruction, or we could say we know this meets our requirements, so let's just get it out of the way. We'll have to wait and see.
Patrick, thank you for the super chat. Time to not get any work done today. No kidding, and you super chatted that 31 minutes ago. So unfortunately, I think things have gotten worse since then with that abort and now hopefully recycle. Ben says, is SN11 this week realistic? I'm guessing you were talking about a flight. I think so, especially if they get a good static fire done today. That would give them the second half of the week, most likely, to conduct a test flight. I think tomorrow might be a bit too soon, although there is a temporary flight restriction for tomorrow, but we haven't really seen any of the other indicators we're looking for, like a village evacuation notice. So I think probably Wednesday at the earliest right now if the static fire happens today, but definitely a chance for a flight this week. Sebastian, thank you for the membership. Mark B says, I'm a business guy, wannabe space nerd, very interested in Axiom and their experienced leadership. What do you all believe the future of private space stations look like? Opportunities?
Oh, I
It's
hope so.
Yeah, I think Axiom's a great example because there's not the idea of a private space station isn't super new. If you remember Bigelow Aerospace, which is like not confirmed but expected to kind of be dead at this point. Haven't heard from them in a long time. But they kind of had this idea of, yeah, we want to build a space station in low Earth orbit, or I think they had plans to do it on the moon too. That is privately run, not by government space agencies like the International Space Station is. So it's not a super new idea, but Axiom seems to be kind of the first one that has come up and said and had firm contracts in place, firm plans to actually execute on that. I'm very excited to see some hardware of their first module coming up before too long. It's kind of something. It's going to start by just building onto the International Space Station, so they'll get a lot of experience from that. And it's a kind of a very technically sound way to get to operations by taking advantage of some of the resources docking to the International Space Station gets you. And they've already got crews for their first private missions picked out, and they're going to launch on Crew Dragon, so they have those launch services kind of taken out. I don't think they have launch services for the actual module of their own space station yet, because I think they're going to fly just to the ISS first. I don't think we've seen hardware of their first module, and I don't think I've seen them say how they will launch said module yet. That would be another big step to show that they're really serious about what they're doing. But I think that at least initially, you'll just see we want to offer this commercial platform, which is newer and modernized compared to an admittedly aging International Space Station, that can reduce some maintenance costs and things associated with that, as a research platform just like the ISS is, but it's just run by a private organization rather than working with government space agencies, right? And there could be a tourism aspect of that as well, but there's no reason that scientific research can't also continue on these newer platforms that are just being run by a different organization. And I think that's kind of where it'll start, because that's where a lot of the demand is to get microgravity research done. And does that evolve into making space tourism a real thing where everyday people can get to space? There's a lot of cost reduction that has to happen before that happens, but that's also a possibility. I don't know. Any other opportunities for those kind of private stations to open up a new market or something like that?
I'm sad about Bigelow. I mean, COVID-19 seems to be the sort of final nail in the coffin for that company. And I do think they've said they would rehire everybody if conditions permitted, but who knows if and when that'll happen, and how many of those people will be able to come back. Maybe they might have moved on to other jobs or what have you, but Bigelow in particular and their expandable module hardware seemed like it had such promise and such potential. And no matter what, whether it's Bigelow or Axiom or another company, I don't think we're going to see space hotels anytime soon, at least not until the cost to launch humans into space is dramatically reduced. And that would take something like what we're looking at right now with Starship. I think even with Crew Dragon being fully operational and robust and reliable, and private missions like Inspiration 4 or Axiom 1 or whatever they're calling it, flying on Crew Dragon, any kind of hotel, you're not going to have enough clientele to book the room constantly. I mean, I don't know, maybe I'm wrong and I don't understand the market there, but it just seems like, I mean, I know it was sort of the case for Bigelow at least, where they're saying like, we have all of this ready to go in a lot of ways. It's just a matter of if we launched it, we don't have a way for people to get to and from it on a reliable basis cheap enough. So it's sort of a chicken and the egg problem, and we're not going to have space hotels until the cost to launch humans and ease of launching humans into orbit comes down significantly. So, yeah, I mean, I hope it happens. I think of a space hotel and I immediately think of Skylab and the videos that we have of astronauts just winging around in Skylab with all this space for activities. It's just, yes, can we please get some large non-ISS modules up in space? So that'd be cool. Anyways, that's my thoughts.
Really quick, I see a bunch of questions kind of asking about where we're at right now, so I do want to give a status update. Right now, we had an aborted static fire a few minutes ago. We saw ignition occur and a little bit of thrust generated from maybe one engine. They do that staggered start, so it's possible only one engine actually started firing. But it was a very brief, clearly aborted static fire, followed by the normal abort vent, so definitely an abort. And we are now standing by to see if they recycle. Obviously, you can see activity over at the tank farm is not completely
sorry.
gone.
As soon as you said, "Oh, as you can see," and then I switched cameras like.
No,
right
you
as you
should,
were
we can
saying
see
it.
it at this view too. We're good. There's a little bit of activity on tank farm, but not what we would kind of call. In fact, is that the recondenser that we're seeing? I can't tell.
No, you can't see the recondenser from
Right,
this
you
angle.
can't
It's
from
hidden
this view,
behind
right?
those
So that's
tanks.
just like the standard sort of ambient venting.
Yeah, you got it.
So right now we're standing by to see if they will recycle for another temp. You can still see there's some vapors underneath the skirt of Starship because I don't believe they're not done detanking yet. So we're standing by for a potential recycle. They did extend the road closure till 3 o'clock p.m. locals, so they've got just over 2 hours left, which is plenty of time to recycle and do another static fire. And so we're just standing by for that at this point. The sign that that is happening is when the recondenser and tank farm activity really spools up again. Or that they open the road up and teams go back to the pad, in which case we know they're done for the day. So we're standing by for one of those two things to happen.
And look at how much it cleared up from the beach angle here. Like, you couldn't even see Starship a little bit ago, and now it's cleared up. So that's good for us. We like it when we can actually see Starship through the mist or haze or whatever.
Mr. Hayes, who's that?
High school science teacher, actually.
Oh, really?
No, I'm kidding. I made that up.
Got a couple of super chats, and we've got a whole bunch of them, so I do want to speed run a couple of these. Chris Law says, for Mary's coffee refill, thank you all so much. Appreciate it. Jala with a new membership, thanks for joining on. Wystrom with a super chat, thank you so much. Grumpy Modeler says, what's Starship's max warp speed? I think that's to be determined. Appreciate the super chat, though. And then Glenn with a new membership, thanks for joining on. Appreciate it. T120 with a new membership as well. Thank you all so much. And then a question here from Darwin asking, how much do you guys think a Starship prototype costs on average? Unfortunately, I don't think we have any firm estimates on that, just because that would be some proprietary SpaceX information. Do we have any credible data on that?
I'll take $1, Bob. That's a Price is Right joke for you kiddos out there.
Yeah, so that data is not really available. And I
The
don't
cost is 3.
really- The cost is 3. There we go. That's our answer.
Oh man, so close.
Unfortunately, no good answer for that. Unfortunately. Joey Rogers says you guys should add a question mark next to the siren because sometimes it doesn't happen. We should note that after the static fire and Mary was still stuck in traffic behind the crane, which happens at Boca Chica sometimes, and then when she did get set up, she said that there was a siren just like a minute before the firing or something like that. So there was actually a siren. It came pretty late, but they do try to do that. It's just not super reliable as far as the timing of it goes. But we'll obviously when Mary is not stuck in traffic behind wayward cranes in Boca Chica, we're going to obviously report on that. Debbie Atkinson says that we should have a new name for the landing pad or the drone ship. Read the fine print. Thoughts?
That's good.
That sounds like a SpaceX landing ship name. Johnny Spacer asks, are they venting methane? So not from the tank farm or anything like that, and from right now you wouldn't be able to see any. The methane tank does vent a little bit, but that's limited as best they can. In fact, now that they're using autogeneous pressure, or not autogeneous pressurization, they're using helium pressurization. I'm not sure how much of that vent actually is methane. As much as they can, they use that recondenser, that ground support equipment we see spool up, is there to take methane that is being removed from Starship and recondense it back into liquid form. So they any methane venting they do is very, very limited.
Talking in the back channel about how much we love this shot, and I do too. It's
Yeah.
the cacti in the foreground. This is great.
You know what I was just doing? I just went over to our video record server and I was making sure this raw feed was getting recorded so that we could use it in the daily video.
Yeah, it's great.
It's like an art shot. It's like the turbulence adds to it, I think.
Yeah.
And this is from Mary, correct? This is
Yeah,
Mary's
this is-
camera
yep.
feed spooling up? Awesome.
Yep.
Very cool.
I'm working on getting some more bit rates so it's a little bit more stable.
Sure. Trying to get to some questions and things here. Why would BN1 not fly? So, if you go back to the beginning of Starship testing, there was several Starship prototypes which were built but never even really tested at all. They're learning a lot about how to build these prototypes, not just how to fly them. And so they might have built the first Super Heavy and gone, you know what, we have an idea on how to build this even better already, and we don't want to test this outdated build extensively at least, so we're going to wait to fly the next version. So that would be kind of our first guess. Also, of course, the production cadence at Boca Chica supports testing pretty rapidly, so they can get to further prototypes quickly. So that's why we are expecting that BN1 will not fly and that BN2 will be the first booster to fly. Again, all subject to change as plans at Boca Chica are very fluid, but that's how we understand it currently.
I like this next question, and I'm just realizing this is from like an hour ago, so we really should speed run some of these. Do you expect Starships to get the soot cover look like Falcons do after multiple flights? And I'll say no for a couple of reasons. I think because Falcon 9 comes in engines first, and it lights those engines at the top of the atmosphere, and of course Starship is going to do the belly flop thing, and it's only going to relight at the end. Right whenever it comes down to land. But the other thing is Falcon 9 uses kerosene, which burns sootier, I guess, but methane burns a lot cleaner. So I think even in that landing burn, I don't think you're going to get that soot buildup on the outside of Starship whenever it comes down to land.
I also, I don't know how much of the soot from Falcon 9 is it getting cooked as it experiences re-entry heating, and how much of it is from basically the dirty kerosene engines and the supersonic retro propulsion that takes place during the entry burn. I always wondered, I mean, those engines, they belch out a good amount of black smoke from their turbo pumps or gas generators or whatever. Like, they are not super clean like a methane flame. So I always wondered, during that entry burn, how much of that soot or how much of that material is coming from the engines themselves versus how much is
just from it getting hot, basically. Yeah. And I've been in Port Canaveral so many times and had that discussion so many times, but never really come to a good conclusion. I honestly don't know. You can see that it's somewhat easy to get off because they always have these lines on there for their inspection points where there's some venting going on right now, by the way. Is that still detanking, or what are we looking at?
Yeah, I believe that is.
If we go to the other camera, we can see the tank farm. It does look like the recondenser is not on right now, which to me indicates that they are still in the recycling process. They have not picked up the next countdown.
Okay. But yeah, you could see on Falcon 9 boosters, you can see those lines where they inspect the welds and whatnot. So it's got to be fairly easy to get off of there, which makes me think that it is soot, you know? But honestly, I don't know for sure. Does anybody know for sure? Have we ever gotten a solid answer on that?
I believe it's mostly like scorching, like as a result of heating, and not a whole lot of soot, just because you can't wipe it off, right? So
I thought you could.
Yeah, I thought you could. Maybe not easily. I mean, because there's the inspection lines, you know, that go.
Right. Yeah, I'm not sure.
Yeah, I always just thought they could clean the boosters essentially all the way. They just choose not to because what's the point?
Which they
did. That was my inkling, anyways.
Yeah, the first couple flights they did clean them off, and unfortunately, although when being on base, I have.
And sorry, Steven, there is the depressurization vent. So that confirms they're still wrapping up the recycle process, but I mean, I should say the detanking process. We're hoping they're going to recycle. We don't know for sure, but you can clearly see that they're depressing Starship SN11 after the previous static fire abort, and now we're going to wait and see if they make a second attempt.
And Julia is saying that you can't wipe it off. So that's news to me.
Right,
Oh,
that's what I
yeah.
thought, and I'm gonna yield to the resident fleet expert. So, yeah, I think it is primarily resulting of heating. I get what you could do is paint over it, and I don't know if that had something to do with, you know, like the early boosters kind of looking cleaner. I really don't know the details on that. I'd love to learn more about what exactly we see there.
That makes me wonder what the deal is with those inspection lines that Steven mentioned, because it does sure look like they clean off several different areas to have a better surface to do a sort of inspection X-ray or ultrasonic or whatever type of inspection that they end up doing. I don't know, but yeah, interesting.
Yeah,
And Brady's also saying, didn't the shuttle get pretty charred on re-entry? So I mean, I do think that Starship will look different after re-entering, but yeah, I think it will look different than a Falcon 9 does after having re-entered. But I think if you put two starships next to each other, and one has re-entered and one is fresh and new, you'd be able to tell the difference almost certainly.
Right,
So,
that definitely. So, and I can't wait to see what it looks like.
yeah, and if you've ever seen stainless steel or another metal exposed to high heat, they are, you know, metal changes colors when it anneals or tempers or whatever the appropriate word is. In fact, I've heard in Clarence Kelly, the Lockheed Skunk Works director and chief designer of the SR-71, would say that unpainted, that thing would get blue at speed. So that's a thing, you know, that we could see a Starship come back with interesting colored metal. That might be how that heat manifests itself.
Rainbow Starship.
We got a whole bunch of questions, so I'm going to try to get through some of these pretty quickly because I do want to answer as many as we can. A super chat question here asking, has there been any updates on what improvements SN15 has? Unfortunately, the latest we've heard is just that we think there's a new thrust puck design, but other than that, we haven't really confirmed other improvements. We'll have a better idea when SN15 moves into the high bay and that stacking starts occurring, because we might see some new features then. There's speculation as to some tweaks to the aerodynamic surfaces. They might be shaped slightly differently. Maybe some new thermal protection system testing or things like that. But that's all kind of speculative at this point. Doug, go ahead, Michael.
Oh, no, I was going to say I agreed with that response.
Douglas Sutherland with a super chat asking, will they use helium or autogeneous pressurization in the header tanks this time? Not sure. They started with autogeneous. It caused an issue on SN8, so they moved to helium on SN9 and SN10, but then it sounds like the problem on SN10 was also related to that helium pressurization, and that they actually expected if they had used autogeneous pressurization, the methane bubbles would have just reverted back to liquid and they wouldn't have had that problem. So not sure.
And then Elon threw everybody a curveball.
Yeah, so
Elon threw everybody a curveball talking about possibly catching Starship like super heavy, or possibly using the bouncy castle again. He likes those bouncy castles.
But yeah, so we don't know exactly which kind of side of the fence they're going to fall on. I think maybe SpaceX is still trying to figure that out too, whichever is the best plan. Nick Salve with the $20 super chat, another stream, another Jackson. See what you did there. Thank you so much for the support. We really do appreciate the generosity. Reaper with the super chat as well. Thank you so much. Joey Rogers, another one saying, can we put a question mark by the siren? Just to confirm, the siren did actually happen. We just didn't know because it happened like a minute before static fire, and the only person that heard it was Mary, who was stuck behind a crane in Boca Chica, because that's how Boca Chica works. So the siren did actually happen, to make that clear. Also, we've got a nice split screen situation going on. Is this a new thing the producers have been doing without me noticing?
Well, you noticed, so I wouldn't say without you noticing.
Well, I noticed it now, but...
No, I just wanted both of them on the screen at the same time, so I just Normally, it's a little bit too much to chop too many cameras up this way, but with
Yeah.
these two specific shots, it's doable. The problem is we have so many different cameras. Like, okay, here's this one on this side, this one on this side, and then this one on this, and then this. Like, there's like the permutations are endless of cameras, unfortunately. So we can only have so many choices the way we mix these things up. But I like this one for now. I think I'll keep it for a bit.
We've got a question here, and I'm trying to find it. Yep, there it is. A question here about how many pounds of fuel does the Starship hold when fully loaded. I'm pulling up the most recent official SpaceX presentation on Starship, which is admittedly a couple years old, but it says the propellant mass is 1,200 tons. So I believe that is the propellant mass, or that is at least an approximation of what the propellant mass for Starship should be about. Let's see here. Oh, here we go. We got regarding our weather balloon discussion earlier. Reginaldo with the super chat says every day approximately 800 meteorological weather balloons are released at 0 and again at 12 GMT at locations around the world. So
Wow.
800 twice a day. So we're up 1,600 a day. That's way more than I thought there was.
Yeah, me too. I thought maybe at any
I mean,
given
granted,
point.
that's spread across the world, but
Now I want to start a company that makes biodegradable weather balloons because I'm just thinking about all the plastic we're chucking into the ocean. Whee!
that, you know what? That's a fair point. But thank you for the super chat there. Appreciate it. Jonathan Silva with a new membership. Thanks for joining on. Bill with my usual contribution to the coffee and cookie fund. Thanks, guys. Really do appreciate that. Let's see here. And Chris K just asking if Mary would ever join the comms during a static fire or a launch. Mary likes to stick behind the camera. She's usually in comms. She can hear us right now. Hi, Mary. And if you say hi to Mary in chat, she'll see that too. So if you want to say hi to Mary, please do so. I know she appreciates it.
I mean, comms down there, also in Boca Chica, is really spotty. I mean, I mean, you can hear me. I'm at South Padre Island, and sometimes I have issues, like I did earlier on the stream. And every now and then, Mary pops in. It's really nice when she does. So hopefully, you know, if she's ever wanting to, she knows that she can, and the signal abides. But the signal does not always abide, unlike the dude.
And Mary operates like 4 cameras at once, so it's kind of
Yeah.
hard to do that and commentate at the same time.
Got some more questions here. Asking, do we think BN2 will need to have some kind of temporary nose cone added for its flight test? So if we're talking about flying BN2 without a full stack, without a Starship on top, that would depend on what kind of flight test they want to do. If they just want to do like a 150-meter little hop test like they did with some really early Starship prototypes, then you probably wouldn't need a nose cone. Aerodynamics wouldn't be that important. I mean, look at Starship SN5 and SN6. They were just testing Raptor propulsion and landing legs and things like that. They weren't testing aerodynamics. So if that's the case, they won't. If they want some sort of high altitude test flight or a long distance test flight and aerodynamics will matter, then they could, I mean, what they could do is literally just take a Starship nose cone without the fins and put it on Super Heavy because it's the same diameter, right? That would actually probably be really easy. So maybe we'll just see that for some sort of test flight vehicle. But I think we have to wait to see what exactly they have in store for that test flight before we make that kind of guess.
Here's a question from Sammy J. What happened to the flare stack? It used to be such a big part of the NSF stream experience. Well, they used to burn off excess methane, but now they're recapturing it and putting it back in the tank, right? Not the Starship tank, but back in the tank farm, right?
Yeah, and Doss, if you go full screen on the beach camera, please, you can actually see the flare stack on the far right-hand side. The flare stack is still there, and you may see them vent some nitrogen through it. I think it's nitrogen they often vent through it. It could also be liquid oxygen. It's definitely not methane if they're not burning it off with a flame, but you will sometimes see some vapor coming through it. I'm not quite sure why that is, but when we saw that Abort earlier, there was some vapor, if you caught it, coming out of that. And presumably, if there were to be some sort of, emergency at the pad where they needed to burn off methane quickly, they could use that flare stack still to burn off the methane.
And while the flare stack was cool, I remember watching it, and you could actually tell things like depending on what the flare stack was doing. But it's good to recapture it because methane burning, it's not good to be pumping that out if you don't have to.
Yeah, I
Right.
seem to remember, it's been a long time, but I seem to remember the flare stack would get huge like 20 seconds or so before engine like T0. Like I sort of wish we could have Adrian go back and reanalyze all of our older streams, and I don't think we had a clock that was second accurate at the time and stuff like that. But um, yeah, there were things that we could either tell or thought we could tell based on the flare stack, and I am sort of sad to see it now relegated as a sort of secondary piece of equipment.
Also, I may have done the thing where chat explodes with people saying hi, Mary. So Mary, chat says hi. Just gonna put that out there real quick. Go some more questions here.
Oh, look at that! The border between both frames got really small. Nice. I like it.
Real-time production engineering by the NSF team right now. Appreciate it.
Constantly improving.
It was
Also,
too
Johnson
wide.
Michael
I had
at
to go
the-
through and thin it down a little bit. It was too wide. So,
No, it's
thanks for
this is
noticing.
excellent. Also, the horizons are matched delightfully so. Good job.
Yeah.
The joy of robotic cameras, I can make that one match Mary's by just logging in remotely.
A question here, could SpaceX reuse the Raptor engines after a successful landing? Absolutely. The entire Starship system is designed to be reusable, and that includes the engines, just like Merlin engines on Falcon 9. Raptor engines are designed to be reusable, fire many, many times, not just in one flight, but across several flights. And so when they do successfully land a Starship or a Super Heavy vehicle, those engines are going to fly again, almost certainly. Obviously, if it's the first one to land, maybe they rip apart the Raptors and get some data from that instead, but eventually they will be reusing the engines just like the rest of the vehicle.
And
a question
Adrian
here
is
from go ahead.
Adrian is messaging me that the flare stack, getting the amount of flare coming from it growing significantly is accurate to what we now track as the tri-vent pulse. So that's really
Gotcha.
interesting. So that would mean that the flare stack got really active about 20 to 25 seconds before ignition. So yeah, that's really cool that Adrian had figured that out already. Neat.
A question here from Julian saying, how many tests are done before a flight test? What are their purposes? So the first thing, I mean, recently the test program has changed a little bit, but for SN11 specifically, they rolled it out to the launch pad, mounted it on the pad, and the big first test they did was an ambient pressure test, which is just pressurizing the tanks at ambient temperatures to make sure that they can hold pressure that way, and then doing a very similar test but at cryogenic temperatures, which is called a cryogenic proof test, where it's super cold nitrogen is pumped into the tanks to make sure that pressure still holds under those conditions, and then they move into the static fire test, which involves loading real propellant, methane and oxygen into the tanks and firing the engines for a couple seconds, which verifies not just the tanks themselves and the fueling systems, but also the engines themselves for just a couple seconds. And then once that test is done, they're ready to go into the flight test, which of course the purpose of that is to actually test the vehicle through a specific flight profile. So that's kind of the 4 tests that Starship prototypes are going through currently, and what each of those do. A super chat question here from NNA asking, booster wreckage cleanup may be intimidating. Test vehicles could be initially equipped with a bunch of Falcon 9 legs. I don't know if that's an option they're considering. A Falcon 9, a leg design similar to Falcon 9, is obviously tried and true on the Falcon 9 fleet, but don't know if they'd be applicable to Starship. I think they're trying to limit mass of those legs as much as possible. I know that's a big concern with eating into the payload mass of Starship by building really big legs. But we don't know what kind of designs they're looking at.
Do we know how heavy the legs are for Falcon 9?
I don't know if we do. I mean, there might be some educated guesses out there. I don't think we have a hard number. But
I know they're huge.
Yeah, they are huge, but they're mostly carbon fiber, though, right? So they're probably light,
right?
At least for their size. Versus stainless steel, which is heavier. So that's possible, but we don't really know the details of what SpaceX might be considering. That is a big topic in Starship development, is will there be landing legs? Will it be sort of a tower catch situation? If it's legs, what will that look like? So I think that's something they're working on. Ron Smith says that SpaceX needs to get a core sponsorship and apply the Blue Mountain logo design so we know when Starship is being fueled. Nicely done. Appreciate the super chat. And Grayson says that maybe they aborted the static fire so Mary could get into position. You know what? Wouldn't rule it out. No, I'm just kidding. But I know Mary appreciates the chance to see yet another static fire attempt from now that she's all spooled up. Appreciate the super chat. And Aaron with a new membership as well. Thank you so much. We got a question here asking how long can they store the fuel inside of Starship? Do we know how long they can like hold a fueled Starship before they have to detank and refuel?
Not that long, because we have not seen them hold the countdown for more than maybe 10 or 20 minutes. So I think the propellant does start to warm up fairly quickly, and then they have to recycle the countdown. But I don't think we have a firm number, but we've never seen them hold a countdown for more than 10 to 20 minutes.
So there, that might be a lower bound to their time, yeah.
They might be updating their processes so that they can continue to condition the propellant and add in more cold propellant to hold longer. I'm not sure, but with Falcon 9, they cannot hold without recycling because they use super cold liquid oxygen.
Yeah, we saw them try that one time when it was, I think it was a wayward boat, and they tried to just recycle the count, and then whenever the engines did ignite, it turned out the fuel was too warm and they had to shut down immediately. That was a few years back.
I'm trying to remember what launch that was. I know exactly what you're talking about.
It was I want to say it was an SES mission, possibly. I don't know. I'm not sure.
Let's see here. We do have a question here asking what do we mean by the term recycle? So what we mean by that is taking the countdown and going back to the beginning, basically. So they got to static fire and did an abort at engine ignition. So they're going to cycle the count back to the beginning right before propellant loading, which basically just means making another attempt at whatever countdown they're doing, in this case a static fire countdown. So that is what a recycle means in the context of spaceflight launch countdowns.
And Adrian has some data on the previous question about how long they can hold for. He says there's never been a variation of more than 10 minutes in a countdown. So far, the longest hold we've seen is about 10 minutes.
I like this one here from David Noble. How can they be sure the nitrogen is 100% purged and isn't contaminating the methane and liquid oxygen? I would say when the nitrogen reaches ambient temperature, it just evaporates.
Yeah, and I don't know if nitrogen would even like have a contamination effect, because I mean it obviously evaporates at ambient temperature. And I don't know. That's a good question. It's inert, so even if it gets into the propellant a little bit, it's not going to combust. Unlike if you had helium ingestion, that's a bigger problem, right? But nitrogen does not burn on its own. So
it wouldn't necessarily mix with it, would it? Could it mix?
Right, unless there were bubbles in there, but it's also but nitrogen compared to methane or yes, and also compared to is lighter than both oxygen and methane. So
it's going to rise to the top anyway.
Right, so it should rise. So that I don't think that obviously I think they purge the lines and then give them some separation to let the nitrogen get out. Like they're not trying to pump nitrogen into their propellant tanks, but nitrogen ingestion is a lot less of an issue than things like helium or things like that. Because I mean, helium is also lighter than both of those propellants, but I think it's a matter of nitrogen being an inert gas, so it doesn't actually matter. We got a super chat question here from Musical Wolves. Thank you for the support. When was the last time a Starship static fire had no issues on the first static fire attempt or flight attempts? That is a great question. Has that ever happened?
I don't know.
I mean, the point of these static fires is to find issues and give SpaceX teams an opportunity to correct them. So it's not a problem that they're having aborts and recycles so they can fix any issues that they have. I can't recall a time where it happened on the very first attempt, but that's not. I'm not trying to. But that's, to be clear, that's not an issue, right? That's just part of how these test programs go, and what the point of these tests are is to find issues. So.
Yeah, one thing to keep in mind is that you don't usually get to see the development process of a new rocket. You don't know the kind of hurdles that they have to go through. Usually, it's just that we have the luxury of having Mary and Jack and then the robot army out there to watch this every time they do a significant test like this. So it's nothing to be alarmed about if a test doesn't go off without a hitch the first try. I mean, again, I'll revert back to just going through Liftoff, Eric Berger's book, and there's a lot of issues leading up to success. And it's not that issues are bad. It's just there are these hurdles that they have to get through, and you don't usually get to see that in a development program.
But to specifically answer the question, both SN5 and SN6 only had one static fire.
Ah, so there you go. All right, so 2 examples. Huh. That is interesting. And of course, in their flights also, Raptor performed perfectly, so...
Yep.
There you
SN5
go.
and SN6 flew through their test campaigns.
Literally.
Also, we got an answer in chat actually talking about nitrogen. This is a point that we kind of alluded to, but we didn't actually fully make. A very good point. Nitrogen has a lower boiling point than both liquid oxygen and liquid methane, so it would be a gas and be displaced, so it wouldn't be a liquid that gets pumped into the engines or anything like that. So that's another point regarding that nitrogen sort of contamination issue. So thank you for that, Mike, for your contribution to the discussion there. Another question here from Matthew asking, what is the least amount of Raptor engines that Super Heavy, could use to launch Starship on an orbital flight? Do we know them? We know nominally it would be like 28 engines or something, but that's like a fully operational launch. That's not actually how many they need for a test flight. Do we know the minimum amount of Raptors that they would need?
I don't.
Don't think so.
I think maybe lower 20s as speculative, but
Well,
I
we
don't
know
think we have an official number.
Elon said the thrust to weight ratio is 1.5 with 28. So I'm not sure like what payload mass that
Right, with what payload or whatever.
assumes and how much. Do we even know how much each Raptor weighs?
Yeah. I doubt it.
Yeah. So if you like remove a Raptor, we don't know what that does to the mass of the overall vehicle too.
But so if you want to approximate it as just saying 2/3 of the engines, that we're now
Yeah.
talking about, oh god, 18, 19, 20-ish, if you round up a little bit. So I would probably say like 20-ish would be a feasible minimum, but that's pure speculation. So
We are continuing to see venting from Starship SN11 right now. Still waiting to see the methane recondenser come on. That would probably be the good sign that they have re-entered the countdown. But hopefully we will see that happen soon.
got a super chat here from Real Pride asking, is an orbital flight with SN20 and BN3 really targeted for this July? So if we talked about this a little bit earlier, if you have not seen it, check out the latest article on nasaspaceflight.com, which does dictate that SpaceX has a internal target for a orbital launch attempt with Starship SN20 and booster BN3 by July 1st, so actually before July technically. That's an internal target, right? So SpaceX is going to work towards that as a goal. But if that means they launch later in the summer, that's okay, right? That's their earliest possible date if everything goes right between now and then. So that is their target, and it just shows that they really do want to make orbit by this year. But we're going to have to wait and see all the tests between now and then to see what kind of timeline it will actually occur on. But they're moving as quickly as they can, and they do want to get to orbit quickly.
I like this one because it talks about actually riding Starship. How will passengers and astronauts disembark a red-hot Starship straight out of atmospheric reentry? And I would say that, of course, the windward side, where all the heat tiles are, that's going to take a brunt of the heat, and there's going to be some time for the skin of Starship to cool down, and they'll probably actually have the door on the back, the very back, like the center of the back side, I would think, and that's probably going to be the coolest part of Starship.
Yeah. Also, right. I mean, if you look at capsules that come back to Earth, whether it's Dragon or Soyuz or whatever, they go through intense atmospheric entry, but by the time they make their splashdown or their landing or whatever, the spacecraft is cool again. You're flying through cooler atmosphere at that point, and that you cool off pretty quickly. So by the time Starship lands, obviously the engine section might get hot because it's a propulsive landing. Once the engine shut down, that cools down pretty quickly too. So,
Yeah, you'll
so
be
Star-
far away from the
yeah.
engines.
Right, and so Starship won't be red hot after touchdown. That's not really how that works. It will have cooled by then. Here is a interesting question from Stefan asking, will a full thermal protection system offset the center of mass so much that the Raptors have to gimbal against it? So we're talking about putting thermal protection tiles along the whole one side of the vehicle, obviously the windward side, which means there won't be as much on the other side. So I suppose that would mean that the center of mass might not be exactly in the middle. That's an actually interesting point. It depends obviously how heavy the tiles are. It might be relatively negligible to the point where you won't even recognize the gimbal. Obviously, most spacecraft have these inertial sensors that can measure its acceleration in various ways, and so the engines automatically account for that. So it's possible that Raptors will fire ever so slightly asymmetrically to account for that, but it might not. It might be so slight that you don't even notice, to be honest.
Yeah, and I think we do have an answer to the question we were wondering earlier. And that was what the crane was doing at the production site. If DOS can change to the other robot. Maybe DOS is not on comms right now. But anyways, the crane is at the high bay, so we will show that once we have DOS back on comms.
We also have another answer to another question. Let's see, Agalito says that the dry weight, talking
There we
about
go.
the Raptor.
Right, there is the
Oh, go
high
ahead.
bay with Starship, or excuse me, booster number 1 inside the high bay. And it looks like Tankzilla or the big crane. Tankzilla is our nickname. It's not the official name. I think. Jack, what model is it? I'm putting Jack on the spot because he's a Liber something. But anyways, the crane is likely going to stack the liquid oxygen LR 1600/2, says Jack. Thank you, Jack. But the crane is going to stack the liquid oxygen tank for the booster onto the methane tank, most likely. The liquid oxygen tank is on the top of the super heavy stack. It is on the bottom of the Starship stack, so don't get that mixed up. Again, liquid oxygen on top of the super heavy stack with methane on the bottom, and then Starship is the other way around.
But
Go ahead, Steven.
Yeah, Steven, if you want to.
Oh yeah, yeah. We were talking about the how much the Raptor engines weigh, and Agalito says that the dry mass is 1,500 kilograms or 3,300 pounds. So that times 28. Hey Siri. 1,500 times 28. That'll be 42,000 kilograms for all 28. Go figure. 42 got snuck
Oh
in
my gosh, that's hilarious. You know, it's funny because the first interplanetary transport system had 42 first stage engines, which was a whole
That's
thing.
right.
And then when they scaled it down, we're like, oh, it's not going to have 42 engines anymore. But Elon finds a way. Well, if we just make the mass 1,500 kilograms, it's 42,000. That's hilarious.
Ryan says, yo, Mary, buy yourself something. Thanks for what you do to keep us informed. Yeah, I think 10 years from now, the complete documentation that we have on this program, thanks to Mary, is going to be quite amazing to have. And, I mean, Jack, I think you're going to have fun with all the footage you have to edit. You can put together some pretty high-quality documentaries in the future for our channel. Evan says, can you hear the venting of the flare stacks from South Padre Island? I don't think you can.
No,
I know
you
you
can
can definitely hear. Go ahead, Jack.
You can hear static fire, but you cannot hear any kind of venting or anything. And,
yeah, that's what I thought. But
and speaking of edits with all of Mary's footage, my mom actually today, I was talking to her on the phone, and she had an idea for a video comparing SN8, SN9, SN10, and SN11. Sort of like, I don't know if you saw that photo that Tyler did the other day. It's like it's a 4-image photo of each of the starships comparing the growth of the heat shield. That might be a cool video to do. But just throwing that out there before I forget. Thanks for the idea, Mom.
Yeah, and that view of SN11 and SN15 side by side is clearly shopped. You can see the seam. I think Marcus is joking there. Yes, that was SN11 on both cameras for sure, but hopefully we will see another. I don't know if we're ever going to see two Starships on the stand again, but we might see Booster number 1 and Starship on the stand. Perhaps Booster number 1 and Starship SN15, because we do expect the first orbital prototype BN1 to be tested on Pad A. So fingers crossed, we might see two vehicles on those test stands again. And then, of course, as we move towards the more operational booster design, the booster testing will head over to the orbital launch pad.
Yeah, looking back at having SN9 and SN10 at the pad at the same time, that was just so special. So special to see and have happen. And yeah, who knows if we'll ever see something like that again.
Jack, here's a question for you from Jamie. There was only one close video of the landing. Why? I think you're talking about SN10 maybe?
I'm not sure what the answer to that is. I mean, I guess it depends on how you define close video.
I mean, I think the answer is there were multiple videos of the landing that I saw.
Yeah, I also thought so. Maybe I'm misunderstanding the question, but yeah, there was multiple angles.
Yeah, I mean, we had a couple cameras. Of course, SpaceX had a couple cameras. I know Classic Perspective had cameras. There are lots of cameras out there.
Yeah.
Spaceman with $5. Thank you for the super chat. Sasquatch, thank you as well. Fry says SN11, Fart, Fire Up, and Rapid Termination. That is quite the acronym. Jonathan says internal Starship tanks going to change once we get the final craft rated for human flight. Doesn't seem to be a whole lot of room for people.
Well, there is though. All right, so if you look at the vehicle, right, only the bottom half is tank section. The whole top half is basically an empty nose cone at this point.
I'd say top third, but yeah.
Or top third.
I think it's half.
Is it really?
No, you're right, Jack. It is. It's like 40/50 or 40/60 maybe. It's not quite 2/3, but
yeah. So
actually
you can see...
no, it's 3/5 because the tank section is 30 meters and the height is 50 meters. So it is 60% tank section, 40% payload capacity, approximately.
You can see the raceway there on the leeward side that we're looking at.
Mm-hmm.
That raceway, those pipes that go up the center of the cylinder, those go up to near the top of the tank section. So that's roughly tank section versus nose cone. Is you can sort of look at that raceway and sort of eyeball.
Yep. And I mean, what I was about to say is that the nose cone obviously kind of comes in at the top, so it's not quite, in terms of volume, a 60-40 split, but in terms of height, the tank section is 30 meters approximately, and the payload section is 20 meters. Sam Halter says, a donation to establish a fund to obtain a small camper for Mary so she can have a place to cool off and recover during her marathon filming. Sam, especially in the summer, I think that would be a great idea to get Mary some proper air conditioning, because right now, let's see what the weather is on our overlay. It's saying 76 degrees in the summer months. That can get over 100 with 90% humidity. So that would definitely be helpful, I think.
Yeah, my first thought was, I'm sure she has a vehicle that has AC, but I've been through Texas, and actually both times I've ever been to Texas, we had a breakdown due to overheating.
Oh, geez.
So yeah, it's a big thing out there. It gets hot in Texas.
Jack, what do we know about the plans for Starbase Texas?
I don't think we know much about the plans yet, other than presumably SpaceX is going to try and buy up a whole bunch of land, even more so than they already have out there, and incorporate a city, which seems like a real thing that they can try and do. And I am not a civil engineer or a zoning expert or any of that, so I'm not quite sure how that'll all play out. But I mean, was talking to Mary yesterday. while I was out at the launch site, and we both kind of agreed that part of the reason that we work so hard to capture things as they are right now and document things as they are right now is they're rapidly changing. It's already rapidly changed since the Starhopper days. And over the next year or 2 or 5, who knows how Starbase Texas will shape up. But it'll absolutely look much different than it does right now. And that's just the march of progress and the march of time. So
I was
Yeah.
actually thinking the other day, I don't think people appreciated the Starhopper days quite enough.
there's a distinct reason why I spent as much time and still do out here as I possibly could, because at the time it was completely self-funded on my own part. I mean, I started my Patreon, I think, when Starhopper did its 150-meter
Yeah, you
flight. Like
did, because
that's
I
when I
remember
started it.
back then it was pretty much, I think it was just, we definitely were not live streaming back then, so I think I was watching Everyday Astronauts live stream, and I remember you were on that live stream too for a bit. That
Yep.
was pretty cool, but
Yeah, the first
crazy
live
to
stream I ever did was a live stream with Tim, and it wasn't even like I was officially doing it. I was just standing next to Tim, and I would shout out things, and Tim would occasionally put up with me enough to let me say something on stream or what have you. And yeah, that was I think you're totally right. People did not appreciate the Starhopper days for what they were, and I don't even think I did. I mean, I knew at the time even this is really special and not going to last, and I know that now. But it's still hard to not take things for granted. I mean, even like we were just talking about, the having 2 vehicles on the pad at once. Like every single day out here, we see new and interesting and novel things, and yeah, it's not always going to be like that, and you have to kind of appreciate it for what it is while it's like that.
Yep, and I mean, luckily you and Mary were out there chronicling the Starhopper days, so we have all that footage for people to look back on. But seeing a test prototype like that was built in the open air and actually worked on 2 test flights is quite incredible. Not something we're going to see again, I don't think.
I think technically 3, because there was a tethered hop that was like inches, and then there
Okay,
was a
I don't
20
count
meter.
that. I know, I mean, Elon said it was a tethered top, but I don't know. I think if it's being held down by something, it's not really a flight. That's my opinion.
I mean, that's a fair assertion to make. I don't know if I agree or disagree, but either way, we can move on to some more super chats and questions.
Yeah, well, here's one from Crafter89. What happens if the liquid fuel remains in the Starship and evaporates? Will the tank explode? If they weren't able to vent the pressure and the pressure got higher than what Starship could contain, then yeah. In fact, there was one test where
Right, I was gonna say,
they
yeah.
go ahead. They weren't able to vent for the first little bit, right?
Yeah, but remind me, was that SN8? Or was that a later Starship? I think it was SN8. They
It was
had a
8.
header. It was 8. So they lost pneumatic control of all the valves in SN8, and so the pressure in the header tank at the very tip of the nose cone was rising and getting close to the point where it would burst. Now, luckily, they kind of accounted for this, and they had what's called a burst disc, which is just designed to burst at a specific pressure and release the pressure in like an emergency. And so the hope was that that burst disc would do its job before it reached a pressure where it would actually be dangerous to the rest of the vehicle, which it did, and so they were able to just replace the burst disc, fix the pneumatics, and they were good to go. But yeah, that is a thing that can happen if pressure rises like that. That is a risk of an overpressurization event. So that's what could be caused by evaporating fuel that doesn't get vented properly or things like that. Yeah.
More questions. Why did SN8 have 3 cryo tests? SN8 was not supposed to have. Well, it had. Now I have to go back and check my notes, but the nose cone was cryo-proofed separately because the nose cone was not attached to SN8 when they did the first cryo-proof. But I believe, if I'm not mistaken, they had to redo a cryo-proof on SN8, and I'm checking my notes, and that is yes. They did 2 cryo-proof tests that had to be redone. So there was 3 in total on the main tank section, and then another 1 or 2 onto nose cones. There's actually more than 3 cryo-proof tests in total, but there were a couple of tests that did not pass. That's why they had to do multiple.
A question here from Alex saying, do you think BN1 will be launching from a suborbital pad or will we wait for the orbital launch pad? So we talked about this a little bit earlier. We're actually expecting BN1 to just do ground testing, and we think they're going to do that at one of these suborbital pads. And the orbital launch pad will be for, obviously, orbital flights, such as, and we're currently expecting the first orbital flight to be BN3. But BN1 will not launch and it will do its ground testing on a suborbital pad, is what we understand the current plans to be, obviously always subject to change.
We have a question from Nitro CS. How will the fairings work for payload deployment? Will the bit above the flaps split? Will the nose cone include flaps hinged to the side? I don't know if we can enlist Doss's amazing drawing ability. He might be able to draw it, but it's basically like a clamshell, I think is what people have been calling it. It'll open up like a big mouth. There'll be a hinge basically behind where the flaps are, as we're looking at it right now, like, or just under it, right? And that whole half of the nose cone is going to open up and deploy whatever goodies it's got inside.
I don't even think that I would draw that until SpaceX actually builds one.
Right, yeah.
We saw some early concepts, and they're
Right.
all made up.
Yeah.
And so once there's actual hardware that seems like it's going to hinge in some direction or another, I think they still have a lot of figuring out to do with exactly how they're going to get stuff from outside of the forward section of Starship. It'll be interesting to see how that goes.
Yeah, especially with that header tank up there, so it's not going to be able to open up all the way to the tip, I would think.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see exactly how that works out, because you got the fins, you got the forward flaps there too.
Right.
You know, and so I don't know. And plus, you lift the starships up by the nose as well.
Oh, that's
So,
true.
all these original renderings, we've seen so much operational handling of Starship that doesn't really seem to fit the renderings that they were showing us. And so I'm really wondering how that's going to shake out in the end when it's like, okay, we have 360 Starlink satellites, or whatever the number is. How does that work? I don't know. I think there's a lot of ways you could guess at it. I mean, you see, there's tons of people that do renderings and, here's all this fan work and 3D artists that make these amazing things. And there was one with Starship flying past the space station at like 50 meters per second.
Yeah.
Came across Twitter, and it made me uncomfortable. I'm like, no, that shouldn't be there. You can't do that. You can't get that close to the space station.
Not allowed.
Not allowed. There's an exclusion zone and everything. But I don't know. It'll be interesting to see with all the equipment and the raceways and all the vents and valves and stuff that we see right now. It doesn't really seem like there's a lot of room for the shark design or something. But I imagine we're going to see thermal protection system completely on one side. And then after we get thermal protection system, then maybe we'll start to see some prototypes for an opening hatch or something like that you could get bulk cargo out. I say bulk cargo, right? Like a bunch of things like a Starlink. Now, of course, why wouldn't they just do a Pez dispenser? They could just have like a little door, and you could just go thoop, 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 and you could just spit Starlinks out this little door, and you don't need to have a big Jaws thing to open it. You could literally just do like a Starship Pez dispenser.
All right,
Okay.
add it to the merch store. We need a Starship Pez dispenser. It's official.
Oh, that would be awesome.
I officially need that. I don't think you understand, Das. I need it.
Like
I need
in
it.
orbit with a bunch of little Starlink Pez's coming out the top of it.
Yes,
Everybody knows what a Pez
please.
dispenser is, right? Like the little candy thing, and it's like shaped like Frankenstein or Yoda or whatever.
Yeah, for some of the younger crowd, if you don't know what a Pez dispenser is, just Google it. You'll understand as soon as you see it. It's something
Yeah.
that us kids from the 80s and 90s we used to.
I don't
Yeah.
collect them or anything, but I would absolutely buy a Starship Pez dispenser. This
Yeah.
feed not sponsored by Pez.
But it should be. Anyway, sponsorship availability, contact, whatever. I think we have a webpage or something, don't we?
Oh,
Yeah,
this
so
is
we
interesting.
so we need a Starship SN5 water bottle, and we need a Starship Pez dispenser. We'll add it to the list of impossible merch.
I just want a T-shirt that's like a stylized Starship looking like it's dispensing Starlings like their Pez. I'd be fine with that.
Oh, I would buy that. That's
I
a good
am
one.
not high maintenance. Like,
Yeah, you are.
hey, rude. You carried any batteries out anywhere lately, Jack? I could get on Amazon real quick. I could order a couple 100 pounds of batteries that need to be carried around.
I'll be good. I'll be good.
Preferably through a field of cacti.
Yeah,
I'll be
field of
good.
cactus, fire ants and cactus. It's just
Yeah.
serious business out there.
Snakes and centipede. Whoa, Mary is saying road open.
Road open.
What?
Okay. Well,
So that
spring
would be
breakers
a
have it.
sign. Yeah, the spring breakers have it. That could be a sign that they are actually going to wrap up for the day, or at least for a little bit. I mean, the road closure extends to what, 3 o'clock local, so they've got just over an hour. In
Yeah, it
theory,
could be that they discovered that it was an issue that they were not going to be able to recycle, and they have opened the road. That's what it sounds like. There, you can see the Tesla
Yep.
security vehicle
Yeah.
heading out, and there's a pickup truck behind it.
Now let's
I wonder-
clarify. Is it road open or is it vehicles going to the pad? Like, are public vehicles able to go, or are they just letting SpaceX vehicles go?
yeah, we'll let
Yeah,
Mary
good-
clarify. She
good
did say the
question.
road was open.
Yeah.
We'll get an answer for that, but
And she certainly knows the difference between the two.
Yeah.
I'm just sort of talking while we get. Look at that.
Yeah, see, there goes
tank
there
truck.
goes a methane tanker. That
Yep.
means the
Yeah.
road's open because they're gonna offload that fuel into the tank farm. That's not like they're not like sending a red team out to the pad to diagnose an issue and then come back and then try again. No, the road is open now. That's what that
Unless
looks
the
like.
issue was low methane. they just
But what if
They ran out of fuel.
What do you mean you didn't fill it up? Like, I'm definitely getting liftoff vibes. You know, where they're struggling to get enough locks on quads.
Yep. I remember.
So the latest saying that Mary's saying that they have opened up the road, which would be a sign that they are going to not be doing any testing very soon, and they only have a road closure for just over an hour.
Yeah.
So if it was like sending out a red team, I'd be like, well, they can go out, fix an issue in a few minutes, and then come back, and they'd still have time to try a static fire. But if they're opening up the road publicly, that's likely a sign they're done for the day. Is that correct?
I mean,
Oh,
you
and
hate-
Mary says that truck is actually
that
a
was
nitrogen
nitrogen.
tanker.
Okay, that
Oh,
was nitrogen. It was
nice.
the same shape as the methane one, but
Yeah.
Mary's got better eyes than me.
She also said Starship food headed to the tank farm.
Well, I mean, normally, if the road is open for real, then that is sort of the end of our coverage. It's a little bit weird, though, because they
Came so
extended the
suddenly.
road closure. Yeah, they extended the road closure all the way up until what was it, till 3 local?
Yeah.
I mean, and it's 151 local.
And Mary says it's open
It's
for
a
real.
scrub. The
Yeah.
road is open. That is
Yeah,
a
it's open,
scrub.
it's open for real. There's no possibility that they would reclose it and re-clear the beach and redo all the stuff that they'd have to do. So with only an hour and 9 minutes left in the extended window, and the fact that the road is open for real, like for real, with public vehicles able to approach the pad, I think that would be the end of the test campaign or the testing for today, not the test campaign. That's the whole Starship thing. So
And they did have still an hour and 10 minutes in a window. So we don't know for sure, but this to me speculates that they may have had data that they wanted to take a look at before they static fire again.
yeah,
Or they may have
Probably.
had engines that they wanted to inspect with eyes on the ground before they static fired again.
Yep. I think I agree with that.
And so to recap what that means for the testing schedule, their next static fire attempt would probably be no earlier than tomorrow. Do we actually even have road closures past today yet?
No, this is the last
Sort of.
road closure that is scheduled. I'm sure that will change. I would.
Yeah.
Although, I mean, I guess the one factor there is, Thomas, is that, as you mentioned earlier, it is spring break. So there you go. They
These
even
are all the
updated
days
road
before.
closure.
Yeah.
They even updated today's road
Oh,
closure
wow.
again. Look, it says
Look, it
testing
says test
completed.
complete.
So.
Yeah. I didn't even
Uh,
know it did that, Michael.
Well, the reason it did that is because it is spring break right now, so they're trying to, on the county's website, they're trying to update it as quickly as possible. But what I was also going to add to that is we do not know if they will test tomorrow, given that the county may want the beach open for spring break. So we'll have to see how that plays out, and
Yeah.
that could be another factor that comes into play.
Yeah, I mean, spring break is a huge deal down there. Like, South Padre Island is a massive spring break destination. The entire time, I mean, heck, well, I'm dating myself here, but 20 something years ago when I was in high school, that was like the spring break destination, right? And we could just drive down there for the day, but it is a massive, massive draw. World's a little bit different with COVID and that sort of stuff, but it's a big part of their tourism industry. It's a big part of their income is just the spring break. So opening up everything as much as they can for spring break is really important to them down there. Now, of course, Starship also brings them a lot of tourism these days, and I'm sure they're happy to have some year-round draw to the area. But I can't see them working.
I wonder if there's just a bunch of spring breakers just sitting at the road closure point, just
Yes.
waiting to get to the beach.
Yes,
Yeah.
I wouldn't be surprised. But yeah, I mean, the amount of people down here cannot be understated. It is crazy busy, busier than I've ever seen in 2 years, 2.5 years, whatever, of covering this stuff down here. It's absolute, and I guess I also haven't been here in spring break times ever before, but it's nuts. Yeah.
Yeah. So I certainly makes sense that they would want to keep that public facility. I mean, the beach, it's a public beach. It's almost like there's the big crowded beach over on the South Padre Island side, and that's where all the condos are and all the places you go and the surfing and all this sort of stuff, right? And you have to drive an hour from South Padre Island proper all the way over to Brownsville, around the ship channel, all the way down here to Boca. This is more of a, I don't know if I would want to use the term secluded beach, Jack. I don't know if you'd agree with me there.
Yeah, I would agree. I would totally agree with that. It's out of the way compared to South Padre Island. It's way less crowded.
You got to work to get here.
It's still pretty crowded, but nothing like South Padre Island. And yeah, I mean, and like you said, so much of the economy down here is based around tourism and spring break specifically. I mean, I've told this story before. I'll tell it again. One of the first times I came down here, I stayed in like a Motel 6 type situation, just like a cheap motel in Brownsville. And in the bathroom, there was a bottle opener like attached physically to the cabinetry in the bathroom. Like, I think that says it all. If you need a bottle opener in your bathroom in your hotel rooms, it's a little bit of a spring break town.
What conversation did I just come back into?
You've been a sophomore in college looking to get away for spring break when you end up in a bathroom that has a bottle opener chained to the counter.
Yeah, and like, why not put the bottle opener literally anywhere else in the hotel room? I mean, it just seems like a little bit less of a sanitary option to put it in the bathroom specifically. I immediately start thinking of the Mythbusters episode where they like tried to figure out how much poop particles were flying around every time you flushed the toilet or whatever it was.
Dude, Jack, that's right up there with a keg of Shiner in the shower and the bathtub filled with ice with a bunch of...
I will not
Exactly.
abide any trash talking about shower beer, okay? Shower beer is one of life's secret pleasures.
It was so easy to clean up. Like,
So you want them to walk all the way out to the other area of the hotel? Oh, so inconvenient.
Anyways, it does make sense that SpaceX and Cameron County out there trying to be advised. Like, just keep the spring breakers in mind and make sure they can make it over there to the beach. But I do believe that is going to end the test. Like Thomas said 15 minutes ago, he was sort of recapping, all right, that's the end of the stream. Then we went off on this tangent.
Yeah, and I came out, I'm like, what is happening? What is this conversation?
Quick, somebody talk about
Starship stream.
NASA Spaceflight Team spring break here. This is our spring break, watching Starship. But I do believe that is going to spool down our live coverage of testing for today. Saw a little bit of a problematic static fire. Maybe it was a pre-burner, maybe it was a static fire that aborted halfway through or something, didn't really get a lot of thrust out of it. Not sure if we're going to see another static fire, but we'll watch the road closures and we'll watch the notices. Remember, Mary out there gets those notices, and if something's going to happen, there's going to be a siren or something like that, Mary is the first to know because they literally put a piece of paper on her door. So I do believe for now, let's go ahead and run around the horn real quick, but we will be ending our stream here on commentary today. We had, I'm just going from the top, Chris Gebhardt. Is Chris still here? I just heard him jump in. He just made like a hee-haw style comment.
I wouldn't say I was on comms. No, I was just queuing up questions for everyone in the background. I wouldn't say I was on comms. No.
Oh, it was like a little door opened to the side of the stream, and you stuck your head out and laughed about something, and then closed the door and went away.
Correct.
I don't know if anybody else got my hee-haw comment there, but anyways. Chris is the assistant managing editor for NASA's spaceflight. And Chris, thank you, even though you weren't on comms, pulling questions out of the queue and getting them all set so that we can answer people in real time is a super important thing. So
I heard you say Chris again. I assumed you were jumping to the other Chris.
He's not even on the stream. But Chris Gebhardt, thank you so much for helping us out today with the questions.
We have news.
Oh no.
Mary received an alert notice for tomorrow.
Oh jeez.
There you go.
So
Well-
static fire is on for tomorrow.
Oh,
What
well,
time, dare I ask?
We'll get that, but yeah.
Okay, that's a mystery. Okay.
Mary's typing. Hold on.
Oh! I thought she had tweeted it. I'm sorry.
No, not yet.
Stay tuned I'll just put Mary's information up, but at Boca Chica Gal on Twitter.
Yeah,
we'll
there
have
you go.
that. We'll have that alert notice for you tweeted shortly.
That's what you should do. If you want to know exactly when that comes out, follow Mary at Boca Chica Gal on Twitter. She was out there. This is her camera. I really like this camera placement. I don't know if
This
it's
is
not
an
as...
awesome
Yep.
view.
Yeah, the stuff in the foreground gives it sort of a sense of scale.
Yeah,
You-
John Krause would be pleased with the
Yeah.
foliage in the foreground.
You almost get like the Blue Ridge Mountain effect, where the foreground isn't as hazed out, and then the Starship it sort of gives it some depth because the Starship has a little bit of that haze in front of it. You know.
Yeah.
It's a really cool
And-
shot, though.
The alert notice is 6 a.m. till noon, so the same window as today.
Same bat time, same bat channel, huh?
Same star time, same star channel.
I guess what Cameron County's doing there is they're assuming that the spring breakers are not going to be rolling out at 6 a.m. and they'll go crack open a couple natty lights tonight, and it'll be tomorrow by about 1 o'clock before they're ready to come back to the beach. Maybe.
I think I physically and mentally retched when you said natty ice. Oh God, that takes me back.
Welcome back to spring break, Jack. So, hey, also on the stream here today, we had Jack. You just heard Jack. Jack.
Hey, I am the person whose voice you are hearing now.
Excellent. Jack has been down there. How long you been at South Padre this time, Jack?
Don't make me do the math. We're approaching SN9 timescales here, and I should have just gone back to LA, but you know how it goes.
Well, honestly, you helped Mary have a break yesterday, didn't you? You went around and did the daily filming, so I definitely think you're getting a lot of stuff accomplished, don't you think?
Oh yeah, Saturday and Sunday she was able to take a day off, and I covered the daily, and hey, at least I'm useful.
Yeah, excellent. If you can't be anything else, try to be useful. I mean, that isn't a very funny joke, I guess. So, anyways, Jack, thank you so much for being out there and wrangling things around, and we will stay in touch with you, see what's going on tomorrow.
No
Hey,
problem.
also, back in the studio, Stephen Marr snuck through here for a little while. Stephen, you still on?
Oh yeah. Good to be here. Just a photographer that likes rockets. I don't know as much of the rest of these guys, but just glad to be here.
You know how you learn about what's going on? You
Pay
listen
attention.
to us for about
Yeah.
40 hours straight.
Right.
But y'all, Steven is one of the photographers that hangs out, been spending a lot of time over around Fleet Cam as well, around the port and stuff like that. So, Steven, thanks so much for hanging out with us today. Of course,
Absolutely.
everybody knows the voice of Thomas Burghardt. Did I ever say Thomas? No. Thomas.
What? Wait, what?
What?
Who's it? What now? What's up? Yeah, I was here. Thank you all so much for watching, and thanks for all the super chats. We know we didn't get to all of them, but thank you all so much for all the support, and hopefully we'll be back for another live stream tomorrow for another static fire attempt. So
I think
Yeah.
I think Thomas intentionally skipped over one super chat that says #Steve Fan Club. I think it
was there a C? Oh, we didn't get to that. It was like coming up next. Hold on, we gotta. Someone flash
Got
that
it,
on. I
got
closed
it,
the
I got it.
panel.
There you go, I got it.
No, that was great. There we go. Aiden
I'm
with the
late.
Steve Fan Club.
Yeah.
That's all right. I know you were jealous.
Excellent. And Michael Baylor was here as well, y'all. Michael.
No problem, and hopefully we'll see a static fire tomorrow.
You on the new? Was the new thing working today?
What new thing?
The thing. Or was it not working? The headset.
Oh, Yes, that thing. I didn't know you were talking about.
Yeah, that thing. That thing. Excellent. So we've been slowly but surely trying to upgrade our gear, y'all. It takes time to ship things around, but Michael, thank you so much for joining us and running all the background stuff and all the things that happen for one of these streams to occur. Did I miss anything? I don't think I missed anything else, did I? Oh, late breaking super chat there. Eric Snyder with the $20 saying thank you, NASA Spaceflight. Thank you for all your dedication and coverage of the life-changing history. Can we theorize how will ferry people to and from Phobos and Deimos? Electric boats. I'm going with electric boats.
There you go.
Yeah, electric Tesla boats would be my guess. Like, for real, I imagine that there will be something like that. Elon will make an electric boat. You watch. But folks, you know us. We could sit here and hang out and look at stainless steel tanks out there in Texas for hours on end. But we are going to go ahead and spool down the live coverage from Boca Chica here today. My name is John Galloway with NASA Spaceflight. If you're watching over on the Twitch side, y'all know me as DOS. But thanks everybody for hanging out. Like we said, tomorrow road closures, same Starship time, same Starship channel, 6 a.m. till noon local time. CDT? Is it a D now?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, yeah, CDT. So that will be tomorrow morning. We are going to do the same thing we always do. We're going to have eyes on Starship, and when there is activity indicating that they have began their test process, that's when we go live. We don't go live at the beginning of the window. We wait until the roads are closed and the tank farm's spooling up, and that's when we go live. So when we go live, that's when you want to show up at the stream. Make sure you subscribe here. Click the button, turn on the bell. Hey, follow at NASA Spaceflight on Twitter. And every time we go live, there's a tweet there as well. So turn on those notifications if you want to make sure you don't miss the live stream. But for now, we're going to go ahead and sign off. And thanks, everybody, for all the support that allows us to do this. And we will see you nerds later. Dope! Studio mode.
The chamber pressure looks good. Following up. Roger, roll, planet. Water towers, fly! Flight downside, speed off. Off.
Yikes. You bet. Concur. We don't need any more of these.